to the sound. To the sound. To the sound.
All right. Yeah, it is. It's late night. Just using StreamYards, not even making a thumbnail, just hanging out late night for a little while. Got a lot going on today, I guess. Just want a little unwind time. Might even, you know what? I don't know, man. I might should have a drink. I don't know. I haven't had anything to drink in quite some time. It'll probably knock me out, and I'm not ready to quite go to sleep yet. So, but I don't know. What are you gonna make? What do you got? What kind of drink? You gonna what? Oh, we got orange juice, huh? What do you think? Should I have a screwdriver? Grey Goose and orange juice? That's what it's called.
Yeah, I guess.
You won't make it strong?
Yeah.
That's another, man.
I'll try.
Yeah, I'll take a weak one. I'll take a weak one.
Double shot or single?
Single shot. Well, I just said weak, so that's. I'm like, yeah, I'll take a weak screwdriver. She's like, you want a double shot? No, no, I don't. Anyway, so I don't know. I was gonna go over some Twitter stuff. I was just looking at different stuff, and one of these things like this, like I did see, somebody had sent me too, but I saw it the other day, and it was on Without a Crystal's Ball thing. Actually, not even the other day. It was this morning, I guess it was. Or just after, no, actually, no, maybe it had to be this evening. So it could have been that long ago. Sometime today I saw it. Okay. But basically it was talking about Without a Crystal Balls was saying, hey, maybe we're going about this the wrong way. Maybe we want Katie Joy to be determined to be a journalist by the court. And, I actually think she makes some really good points. Not Katie Joy, actually, obviously, but Without a Crystal Balls. And I had applied the same kind of critical analysis that I do when I look at these arguments from theist and atheist, and I kind of put my thinking cap on and go, hey, is this a good argument or a bad argument? And I'm like, this is a good argument. So let me tell you her argument and see what you guys think. And hi, Trusted Ape, how are you out there? Greetings and salutations. We're not going to get any live. This is a spur of the moment. I didn't even put it out there. I've also got other things I think that are already giving notifications. You only get 3 notifications a day, so I don't think anybody's even getting notified of this. So I'm not expecting any kind of turnout. Yeah, but people can join if they want to, if I know who they are. Yeah, I mean, sure, right? That's a big deal. But just let me know, because again, yeah, if you want to hang out, sure. I'll put the link out there when they want to. Just let me know in the live chat. But for the people that watch afterwards, because they're not going to be here live, let me run the argument that Without a Crystal Balls was saying. She basically said this: we want Katie Joy to be determined to be a journalist by the court, and the reason being is, one, if she's determined to be a journalist by the court, she's going to be held to a higher standard that she has not met, because she's not a journalist in any way, shape, or form. She has no journalistic integrity. Therefore, we all know that she's not going to have a notebook of the names of people she's contacted, a privilege, book, any notes or anything like that. She's not going to have anything that an actual journalist would have to say that she's a journalist. But assume that she was called a journalist by the court. So assume the court does say, yeah, you know what, we're going to treat you like a journalist. She's not going to have any of that, which is going to really kind of, screw her over. But more importantly, the journalistic privilege that may or may not exist in that particular state to shield your sources would mean that she isn't required to give up her source for all the allegations and things she had accused Robert Shin of 7M Film doing. But if she doesn't give up her source, she's going to be on the hook for defamation, libel, and slander. She's going to be on the hook for that. Now she can, pull this. Oh, I am protecting my sources. We all know that she would throw a source under the bus in a heartbeat if it saved her butt. She doesn't have any loyalty to anybody. We all, in fact, who was it that just put out? I think we're now put out. If you tell Katie Joy something, it's eventually going to get out, or she will have it ready to go at any time to hold over your head. There's no such thing as privilege when you talk to somebody like Katie. It does not exist. Does not exist. There's no such thing as privilege. And so she would have the option, take the moral position that, you're not going to give up your sources, which in a criminal case would, maybe keep you out of jail. But in a civil case, okay, we can't compel you to give up your source in the civil case if she's considered to have journalistic shielding. But if you don't give up the source and you have no evidence of your defamational claims against Robert Shin, that he waterboards people and stuff like that. Oh, thank you. Kano made me no ice.
No, drink it straight.
Drink it straight. Okay, she made me a screwdriver here. I'm gonna try it. One sec. Oh, damn, that's good. That's I bought her a bottle of Grey Goose, just because Actually, did I get it for your birthday? I don't know what I bought it for. What was it for? Just the holidays. Yeah, I guess it was. I just bought a nice bottle of Grey Goose, and she got some orange juice, and that's actually pretty dang good. So, yeah, Costco. Yeah. Oh my God, we had Costco pizza the other day, and I got to tell you, $10 Costco pizza is the absolute bomb. It is the greatest stuff I think I've ever had. I could survive on Costco pizza. It's just, yeah. And they got them hot dogs for $1.50. You get a 20-ounce soda. How do you go wrong? You got the ice cream they have there, the soft serve, which is delicious. So yeah, I'm pretty big fan of Costco. But anyways, going back to Katie Joy. Thank you for this. It's relaxing. Yeah. I haven't had a drink with Kano in I don't know.
We have a lot going on.
How long has it been? Is it 6 months, 7 months? No, we did about a month ago, but I mean, very rarely, huh?
Yeah, no,
and even then, it was only one drink. Yeah. Without a lawyer says, hi, Steve. Hi, Kano. Yeah, this is only one shot, so it's not like it's a lot. She knows that I'm a lightweight. She'll tell you, Steve is a freaking lightweight. There's no question about that. Right? All right. So without a lawyer, now let me know what you think of this. Let me that you think of this about without a crystal ball's argument that it would actually be beneficial if the court did say that Katie Joy was a journalist, because she'd be held to a higher standard. She would have a higher payout against her. She doesn't have, I don't believe for a second she has a source to give. And if she had a source, then why would she be fighting this so much for journalistic integrity? But doesn't she understand, and hasn't her lawyer explained to her that just because you have shielding, that you don't have to give up a source, doesn't mean that you're inoculated from the things that you say online as far as defamation against a person who you're claiming has done numerous egregious things. You have the entire 7 films. They got 3 people suing her for that. It doesn't give you carte blanche just to make it sound like this particular organization has been doing, completely evil, malicious, criminal activity, and then say that, oh, well, I'm only repeating what somebody else has told me. Okay, but if you can't say who it was where you got that from as a journalist, then you're on the hook for it. You're on the hook for it. Now, the downside of this, if she was to be determined to be a journalist, which I don't think for a second is going to happen, is that it would go right to her head. It would give her unfair credibility. It would lead to a boosting of her ego. And I think that's even more dangerous. I would rather have her be determined not to be a journalist and maybe have her less pay out, because that bump for ego is far more dangerous than anything she can get by being held to a higher standard and being liable for more money to Robert Shin. Because the default judgment was already $1 million, and she fought that. She should have taken it, because the summary judgment, or if it goes to trial, is going to be 2, 3, 4 times higher than that, is my guess. This is all guessing, but it's going to be much higher than $1 million. I'm talking several $1 million. And I do think that if she doesn't play ball, I do think if she doesn't do the interrogatories and she doesn't do the evidence that they're asking for, that 7M is just going to ask for summary judgment. You know, without Laura says, good thought process. However, I want the court to find her not a journalist, so it can be thrown at her every time she claims. Exactly. Yeah, 100%. That to me is much greater than her, whatever it is that she could be held liable for. Because we already know she's not going to give up a source, even if she had one. Even if she had a source, she's not, well, no, if she had one, she'd give it up. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Yeah. Yeah, she did that to Toddy Westbrook. Exactly. Cano said, yeah, she did that to Toddy. Yeah, she threw Swanson under the bus faster than, oh, yeah, you want it? Yeah, I'll give him. And so if she did have a source for this stuff, yeah, of course she would throw that person under the bus. But she doesn't. Same reasoning that she did the whole thing with Todd Chrisley. She had no source for the whole, oh, I got this, sex tapes thing from a source. No, you didn't. Todd knew that. So anyways, I wanted to run that out there just to see what you guys think. And I guess the only person who voted that without a lawyer. So by the way, without a lawyer, you want to come in? I know you've never been on one of my panels, at least I don't think so, but you bored? Want to come in and hang out? And I'm having a screwdriver, so that's rare. Let me know if you want to drop in without a lawyer. You don't need a camera either. Hasn't she already been thrown that guy about the Clippers contract? What do you mean? I know there was something about the Clippers. I know that she tried to have some kind of torturous interference with that, but I don't know the exact details. A lot of this myopic stuff, I'm not really, I can't say I'm not privy to it because I can go look. I'm just not interested. I'm more apathetic about the exact details of what she claimed about Shin. I mean, she's literally the kind of person that says if it's raining outside, I'm gonna go look to see if I'm wet. Right? I mean, I don't trust anything she says. All right, she's gonna find her headphones and jump in. Cool. All right, let me give you the link. I'll stick it out there in 1 second here. StreamYards. Just a nice chill stream. And then, I don't know, I might talk about some other stuff here. Okay, there you go. I pinned it. But yeah, that's my take on that. So I don't know when she's supposed to rule on that. I know there's a status conference coming up in March, and I would assume that she has to rule on that by then, or maybe not. Maybe she doesn't have a rule at all. I mean, in her last filing, or last thing from the court, the judge said that there's been no evidence presented that Katie's a journalist one way or another. So does it really matter if there's been no evidence presented, then what is there to rule upon? I mean, they haven't asked the court to decide that, have they? At least not to my knowledge. Maybe they have. I don't know. Have they asked? Maybe you guys know, because again, the court documents are a lot. Have they asked the court to determine if Katie is a journalist or not? And if so, then how is that possible if the judge has even said nobody's giving me evidence for this one way or another? So I'm a little confused if they have asked the court to rule on that or not. Now, we do know for a fact, and this is without question, we do know for a fact that Katie Joy lied about that. Katie Joy had actually said that the court had already determined she was a journalist. We all know that is absolutely not true. But she is trying to convince her subscribers that's true. But anybody with the brain can go read what the court wrote. And the court wrote, it hasn't been determined yet. So who's right, the court or Katie? Because one of those is not correct. They are diametrically opposite. They are contradictory. Both cannot be true at the same time. One of them has to be true. The other one has to be false. Either the court did rule on it and determine it, or the court did not rule on it. There's no middle ground there. And speaking of like knowing and middle ground and all that true stuff, go check out my video today on my series on learning atheism or learning about atheism. And I am discussing epistemology, what it means to be truth, what it means to be justified for a belief. And I think my hangout today was actually pretty good. It was very succinct. I was told by people, try not to focus on the jargon too much when I went on this one panel, and I get that. The jargon can be very, very laden, or at least the dialogues in philosophy can be very laden with jargon. And so I get that when you want to be precise, you want to use the right terminology to convey the right nuance of a meaning when you're talking about these subjects in philosophy. And it's difficult not to use certain terminology because you want to make sure the other person is understanding you properly and that you're not going to be on the hook for some kind of bizarre contradiction between positions that, even though you might be aware, exist on some senses of the word, but the person that you're talking to may not even know the material well enough to know the senses. And so you want to make sure that you're taken correctly. Okay, we got with that lawyer. One sec. And so real quick, let me wrap that up. So anyways, watch that video today. I'm going to be doing more stuff on causal theories of knowledge versus justified true belief theory, because I usually tend to go to justified true belief plus with a safety condition, but I really do like the causal theory of knowledge as well. But we'll get into that on another video. But hey, it's drinking and hanging out tonight, and I've just started my first. So, but anyways, lady without a lawyer, why don't you get yourself a lawyer?
Hey, sorry, can you hear me?
I can.
Cool. So that was all back from when we didn't believe that Katie had a lawyer. You know, when she paper slammed her $10,000 she had to spend to sue you. Yeah.
I remember that very clearly.
Yeah. So that's when I changed my name to without a lawyer.
What were you before?
Just me, Peter.
Oh, okay. No, I remember that very well because she had all this overwhelming evidence, and it turned out to be absolutely nothing.
And Taco Tuesday made that beautiful clip of her slamming all the paper down. That was just heaven. I liked it.
Yeah, she tried. She desperately tried to find stuff too. It was a fishing expedition.
Absolutely.
And do you remember her claim that the whole Facebook group would be investigated and anybody in that group would be going to jail if they're still in it, because she wanted people to leave the one of the original Facebook groups, the one that Ashley Siren started?
Yeah. So that's when I joined it. I joined it when Ashley started it, and then seen you, and then of course Tina had it.
Yeah.
So
and straight up, again, facts. I like dealing with facts. They're objective facts. They're not up into interpretation. You can go look at it and see for yourself. She did say that I started that group in her affidavit.
Yeah.
And I did not.
Aaron's here too.
Where?
Casey's in the chat.
What? Hi, Aaron. Hi, John. Yeah, the link to join is up there. But yeah, that's a true statement. She literally said that I started that Facebook group when everybody knows it was Ashley Siren. This is historical revisionism at its finest, But that's where that whole slamming down of papers, all those papers were screenshots of other people and things that really have no relationship to me, or taking what I said so bizarrely out of context that anybody with a brain that can understand English at a functional third grade level would go, this is not what Steve's saying by any stretch of the imagination. But of course, she being the professional journalist she is, she understands words apparently, and she can take and really get some weird meaning behind something that wasn't intended by anyone. I mean, this is what she's known for. But anyways, hi, John.
Hi, Steve. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, wait a minute. It's early for you in the morning. It's like 6 a.m. or something.
It's 10 to 8.
10 to 8, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I've got to get the kids to school and stuff, but I just thought I'd drop on quickly just to say I've been pottering around this morning, and I listened to the Eric Hernandez discussion that you had. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, obviously, you both sort of laying out the fact that you essentially both get attacked from your own sides. You're trying to elevate the atheist side of the argument, and he's trying to elevate the theistic side of the argument, and you're both getting slapped by your own people. And go, I'm trying to fucking help you here.
That's why Eric and I get along, right? Because we really are trying to help people, and yet we're getting knocked down by our own people for putting out correct information. Now, again, when I say put out correct information, I mean this is how it normally is understood, right? Not that I tend to more like object more realism, but you don't have to subscribe to that. It's moral philosophy. I can't demonstrate or prove moral philosophy that objective morals is true. It's not, that doesn't work that way. Somebody asked me, can you prove objective morality? I'm like, what, can you prove 2 + 2 = purple? What does that even mean?
Yeah, I mean,
To prove objective morality. But there are objective facts in philosophy. If I say objective morality is a metaethical thesis, anybody can go look at that. That's objective. You know?
Well, I mean, as much as
is that Carrie? Wait, I'm sorry. Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but Carrie, is that really Carrie out there? Holy Christ, Carrie, long time. She's an old friend of mine. She lives. I know where she lives, but I mean, she's not too far from me, so to speak. But wow, oh, she was at least. But wow, yeah. Come on in, Carrie. Holy crap, man. Yeah. You know, it's sometimes when you have these weird late hangouts and of all hours, you get people in UK, Australia, you know. But we'll get back to lady in a second here. But let me finish this up with John and then Carrie, come on in. Yeah.
So what I was saying is, like, Sam Harris, as much as his sort of the moral landscape gets panned from multiple angles, it did have some useful insights.
I think so.
About things, absolutely. And one of the things that he said is that nobody would ever tell you that there isn't an objective standard to sort of being healthy. We understand, you know, if somebody said, "Oh, I want to throw up all the time," you know, nobody would say that's healthy. So why do we do the same with morality?
I agree.
We understand what's harmful, and to say something is harmful or isn't harmful has an objective standard to it. And once you accept that, there's a right and a wrong way to navigate through the world.
I run the same argument that harms and benefits for that very reason. Why else do we have morality? You know,
absolutely.
That's what encapsulates. There's an objective standard that to be had.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, what I was going to say, I mean, what you and Eric Hernandez were talking about was similar to what I'd actually responded to a tweet that you'd put up, which was that when you and I are talking to atheists or theists, or it doesn't really matter who we're talking to, a lot of people will make claims thinking that they've got a solid logical or epistemological foundation, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. Their conclusion might actually be right. But when they say, people trot out phrases like "logically speaking," and you go, "Okay, well, what's the logical basis for that? Lay out your case," and then they'll end up saying something that's like, "It's just a claim," or "It's an assumption," or "It's like a reductive statement," and there's no actual logical basis for it or an epistemic basis for it. It's just something that they've been told, and like the trope, like. Oh, well, you can't create something from nothing. Somebody will say, "Oh, that's logical."
No, it's not.
But it's not. It's a really simple Aristotelian notion of cause and effect.
Right.
You know, a logician would look at that and go, "Well, how do we know if that applies to the universe or not?"
Yeah, there's no entailment there. And also, you know, I really think that when we're looking at these causal relationships, that's what we mean by a justification for our beliefs, you know, or at least a justification for our knowledge or position of why we believe what we believe. It is through a causal theory, and that relationship of a causal theory is how we explain to people why we believe what we believe. It acts as a form of justification. There's a difference between causal theory of knowledge and justified true belief theory of knowledge, but they both want to encapsulate what we think of when we say "I know this," from an externalist point of view. But I don't want to get lady asleep here, so
no. But well,
I shift gears back and forth here. Epistemology and Katie Joy. That's the topic tonight.
I did just want to say apologies for not making it, but because I've got a type A strep infection at the moment, so I'm taking.
Oh well, get better, man. But I'm glad. Yeah, get better. But I'm glad that you watched it. I'm glad that you liked it. The feedback has been really good on my discussions with like Eric and Cy.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
And I think you're right with what you said with Rob as well. You know, nice chap, but in terms of interpersonally, but when he's discussing these topics,
horrible.
Yeah, he's not gonna convince many people by just saying this is stupid. This is, you know, it's a very confrontational way of dealing with people, and you're not gonna win people over like that. You are just gonna earn yourself a fuck you. So
yep. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. And
you got
to use that English voice to get Carrie in here. Say, Carrie, come on, Carrie. Carrie, come on, you know you want to.
Use the dulcet tones.
Like I said, we go way back. Holy cow. But anyways, lady, what else do you want to add on that? I'm sorry, we jumped topics like amazingly bad right there.
No, that's fine. I'm just thinking you're in all corners of the earth tonight. Australia, England.
Yeah, I got England, Australia, America. You know, I just need somebody maybe from South Korea, from Africa, from Antarctica,
from South Pacific, and
yeah,
and South America, and you've got the
worldwide streaming. Isn't the internet amazing? How far it can get out there? It's
Susan, kind of like, where are you?
Oh yeah, the learn lawyer. You know, get the learn the lawyer in here. And get Susan from, she's
what are we going to do tonight, Brain? Yeah. Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Trying to take over the world. No.
Yeah, exactly. One day. But you know, it's. I remember back in the day, ham radio was big, and John, I think you might have been a hammer. You talked about it before, but I had a radio communication license, KB6 HSZ, and I got it when I was 13. I went down to, I believe it was West Coast Community College at the time, who had a TV show that I really liked. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a TV show that came directly out of that particular college. But I went down there and went to an exam, right? You have to have an exam. And then you have to do a Morse code test, 5 words per minute. And did really well in the exam, scraped barely by on the words per minute on the Morse code, but sufficient enough to get my ham radio license. And the ham radio license allows you to skip and do radio wave propagation, where you can either like bounce. I've never done this, but bounce things off the moon. You can use repeaters, and you can literally skip using the ionosphere and the troposphere to get, halfway around the world.
You can bounce radio signals off geomagnetic interference, and as if you can sort of defeat the limitations of your line of sight in the same way as we do with satellites.
Right. Troposcopic ducting.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind. It was, to me, I found that so fascinating that you can have a conversation with somebody so far away in real time. I don't know why, because of course, we have the telephones. It wasn't that old, it wasn't like prior telegraph days, but just for some reason, the real time conversations on a CB radio or a ham radio or whatever just seemed, because I use CB more than anything. I still have some CBs. Wilson 1000 antenna. I've got a 29 LTD classic that I modified. I clipped the limiter and downgraded the power to 1 watt, and then I put it to a Palomar 250 Elite. Not that I would ever do that again, because you can't do that. But back in the day,
your answer to this next question will determine whether we can continue being friends. Who do you credit with the invention of wireless transmitters?
Hedy Lamarr.
It was Tesla.
Well,
most people.
Hedy Lamarr is the one that actually came up with the encryption for radio wave. What was it for? Tesla we invented like radio and Marconi. And
well, it's weird. Most people say Marconi, because I think Marconi was the first person to introduce sort of like the production sort of technology, but Tesla essentially discovered.
But Hedy Lamarr's algorithms has really made it things for the general purpose person.
Oh yes,
she was a genius. Yeah, but yeah, if you're asking about radio and wireless waves themselves, then most people would probably say Marconi. But of course, Tesla was just his ability to transmit alternating current with no wires. Pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, like as an intellect, just literally generations ahead of his time.
Oh yeah, no, I think Tesla's was one of the greatest, and he died penniless. He died penniless. Yeah, and I think he fell in love with a dove too, or something, didn't he?
Oh yeah, well as with all of these geniuses, incredibly eccentric.
Yeah. Anyways, so I guess Carrie may have left, so she's not coming in. But all right, let's switch gears back again, because people can get bored. What else do you want to talk about?
This is the discussions we have at work all the time. I'm not joking. I just didn't expect to come straight home.
Yeah.
Oh look, I'm not going to give away where I work, but I work for a company that is very big in telecommunications and IT and phone systems and radios.
Well, they would
and all
appreciate that
sorts.
stuff.
So,
I mean,
so I hear it all day. I just didn't expect to come home and hear it.
well,
when I got home
but
from work.
did they, yeah, but they ever tell you that before Bell was actually a bigger company, and then it got deregulated, right? And it broke up. It used to be was a Bell what was the big organization? It was big organization before then. But anyways, the whole thing on telephony was the freaking. Remember freaking? How big that was when you had a root system, and you were able to freak with a 2600 hertz signal and get to that root, and you could fool the system. You could spoof it to thinking that you deposited quarters, dimes, and nickels into a payphone because it had to do with the sound, and you could literally make free phone calls. And this was like the rave in the 80s. People thought this was screwing the government, right? Screwing over the system. Like, oh, I'm gonna, be able to freak and get free phone calls. It's a phone call, okay? You're not like you're robbing Neiman Marcus or the Mint or something like that. It's a phone call. But people back then, the way they were able to figure out that technology to use it in a way to circumvent the system. Oh man, I was fascinated by that.
It's also a big part of sort of human psychology, sort of reveling in those small victories. There is, and
it's pretty harmless. It's pretty harmless stuff,
And yeah,
box,
I mean,
black box, blue box.
But yeah, I mean, it is also, but in the grand scheme of things, it probably had minimal impact. And once the infrastructure's in place, the infrastructure's in place, there is a maintenance cost to it.
And I actually have an argument for this. I just was thinking about this. Okay, so this is all sandbox. This hangout is a sandbox. Nobody's gonna be held accountable for anything you say in here for bad ideas. Okay, this is shotgun it out there. Because I'm having a screwdriver. I've had half of it, and I'm a lightweight. So this is shotgun it out there. So let's make this argument and see where it goes. Okay, ready for this? Don't hold it against me, but could an argument be made that by doing things like freaking and those little white hat type of things, or little gray area stuff, and maybe like cracking software, like in my day back in the early 90s, I would have shareware that you would need a password to get all the benefits of the entire package, right? And of course, me being I didn't have a lot of money, but I was like, I don't even use this share that much. I want it for one thing, and so I could crack the software. And I don't mean by going and finding a crack for it. I mean, write the crack itself by going into the code, downloading in a soft ice, looking at the hexadecimal locations, looking at the offset, and say, okay, what is this jump routine going to? What's the input for this jump routine? What is the comparative of AX to BX? What is it that I need to input here in order to make it jump to where it's supposed to go if a successful password would be put in? And most of the time, it could take about 4 hours to do a successful crack. For successful crack. Well, at my age, about 4 hours.
I was going to say that this is more of a nutritional needing more fiber argument.
I told you this is sandboxed, okay? I don't know where the hell that came from. Pinel's trying to get me liquored up, and I'm saying up crap. I've literally only had like half my drink. Have I even finished this yet?
No.
And how much alcohol? And how much alcohol you put in here?
Just a shot.
One shot, and I'm halfway through. So I've had half a shot. That's how much of a lightweight I am. But okay. So, but here's my argument. So, I would crack that kind of software and stuff like that, and it taught me how to, at the time, be able to program better, like Visual Basic. I wrote some Visual Basic programs for my store in Radio Shack, and things for a database for what's called Radio Shack Unlimited, where people would order a part and you would look up their name and address. And so I wrote the software pretty much in Visual Basic from a prior program I wrote for my computer class that I had. But I wouldn't have had that experience if I wasn't learning how to break software, just because I wanted a shareware program. Same thing for freaking. People that got into those things, it gave them an introduction to this topic, because many of them became on, and worked for telephone companies and became engineers. So it could an argument be made by doing those little kind of harmless, I hate to say criminal, but even though they kind of are, it has a greater, higher purpose to certain people that might learn from that and become better at what they do. I mean, look at the best white hat hackers out there. A lot of them were black hat.
That I'll jump in because ethical white hacking, obviously, is you look to those people, you hire them with the purpose of finding your faults and finding the cracks in the system. So years ago, you can remember that, these young kids crack into Apple and all these places, and they'd hire them because, oh my God, we thought it was invincible. But now, no, they'd rather have them charged and jailed and right away from the internet.
Well, nowadays, but initially, when they were finding
initially they did, they hired them on. For
I think that is
reasons.
Yes, but I think the time has passed. I think they've gone through that beta stage, and they don't need them any longer, right?
Well, the last 15 years I've been doing what I do, which is hiring, firing in this area, is that comes up on your police check, you're gone.
So again, it was one of those things that may have served a purpose at the time, but the next biggest thing that people might find little hacks for, life hacking. I love watching life hack stuff, right? I find some things I just find fascinating because I'm like, damn, this person's a genius for thinking of this little minor life hack stuff. And so I think that people that do have that kind of intelligence where they can figure things out and hack things will become better at the subject later on, should they choose to pursue that. But I think it gives them a little taste of it. And so it's not necessarily like some big moral evil, Hi, Brandon.
Well, it's also the case that, like you said with the hacking. I used to. I'm an architect.
One second. I muted you, Brandon. You got bad background noise. I'm sorry. I didn't. It's just couldn't hear.
So I'm an architect, and I use obviously the licenses for some of the CAD software, not specifically CAD, but CAD software. Is they're extortionately priced for the commercial licenses. The student licenses aren't too bad, but the commercial licenses for commercial use are absolutely insane.
I'm sure.
On the piece of like thousands of pounds for the license. And when they started moving over, it used to be that you could just buy your single license for that version of the software, and you had bought that copy of the software, and you would never have to pay for the license again. But a lot of the platforms started migrating over to the either monthly or annual subscription model.
Right.
So you would have to pay. Yeah. Yep. So the piece of software I was using, what they actually did was so that you could use it on multiple computers. What they actually paired the software with was a computer dongle that you plugged into the USB. And you could have the software installed on multiple computers, but you just had to plug your dongle in that had the license on it.
To use it,
yeah. But what they did was there was essentially an internal calendar on the dongle. And if you hadn't paid your license, then it didn't work. So I just ripped the dongle onto an emulated drive and just changed the date information, like it wasn't protected at all. It didn't even really.
Of course, there's always a lot of the ways of doing that. It's just like software that you can install for one time. You get a 20-day trial period, and so those you can go in, you can change the dates on those in hexadecimal, and if you have the right software. Back in the day when it was when you're running Windows 95 kind of stuff. Things are a lot more different now. It's a lot more 32-bit architecture. 64-bit programming, and so it's not as easy to do this kind of stuff. They've learned from their mistakes, but back in the day, it wasn't that hard to crack a pretty simple shareware program. And like somebody pointed out, like WinZip 95, people were hacking that program left and right because everybody used WinZip, but people wouldn't want to pay this $25 for a zip program. They get a free version of for nothing that does the exact same thing. And the subscription model, it used to be when you bought software, you paid a one-time cost, you got the software, you can use it any way you want, as much as you want, it's yours. $59, it's your software, $59.99. But now they're like, yay, now we can make an update every year, and your old version is no longer going to work unless you pay for a subscription base or get an update every year. Or you lose some functionality, or you don't have the latest and greatest. And I'm like, brilliant marketing from a financial standpoint, but I hate subscription-based systems like that. I really do, because I think that you're literally paying for the same thing over and over again. And I don't get that. I mean, I don't understand that. It just
this is exactly my position. If it was an expensive license, because there's a lot of it's like it's the development process for these things. It's ongoing. There's always like beta testing and feedback, and that there is a significant cost to them. In the same way as people like a lot of people will look at pharmaceuticals and go, this is a lot of pharmaceutical companies will gouge. But that doesn't mean that a high price point is actually necessarily unreasonable, because of the few drugs that they do end up bringing to market, there's probably hundreds that have.
Yeah, there's a high cost. There's a high cost.
Exactly.
To develop.
It's the same with like childcare. Like I have this conversation with people all the time. Like childcare in the UK is expensive, but that's because under the age of 2, you're only allowed 2 children for one nursery nurse. The minimum age in the UK is like £8.50. Minimum wage in the UK is like £8.50, and you'll pay like £70 or £80 for a 10-hour day's worth of childcare in like a nursery environment. So, but if the minimum wage is £8 and you're paying £8 an hour, and that nursery nurse can look after 2 kids, they're making like £16 an hour, and the wage is £8 an hour. Plus, then they've got all of their other costs on top of that. It's not. It's expensive, but you're not being gouged. But then when these companies, they switch from a pay for the product up front, and then they switch to a subscription model. I'm like, well, that cost of development doesn't. I now feel like I'm being ripped off, so I don't really mind trying to circumvent you. I don't feel a moral obligation.
Yeah, it's right, exactly. It's a little bit, like, hey, you're already gouging me. I'm just returning the favor, kind of thing. Real quick, Zia says, Steve just dropped in for a quick shout out. Love your show's content. Glad to see you're back. Looks like you're hitting on all cylinders. I'm trying. It's not easy. Got a lot going on in life right now. Like I said, I've had some major life changes, major life things, but I got Kano. She's got me. We have major life things going on in both our lives that are affecting both of us. In real life stuff. It's nothing to do with online stuff, but in real life stuff. But it's all going to work out for the best. It's not like, we're good to go. We're good to go. It's just we have to see the other side of that tunnel. But we already got plans to work it all out. Yeah, let's just leave it at that. But anyways, hi Chris, come on in. Link's pinned there. Come on in and say hi, man. More the merrier. Got it. There's a potpourri of topics. But anyways, thank you, Zia, for that. Like I said, I'm trying to put out content that I enjoy, and if people want to watch, that's great. If they don't, they don't. But I got to tell you, I've had about a 600-fold increase on Non Sequitur show since last month, just by putting out what I want to put out. When I finally, say, look, I'm not interested in what anybody wants to hear, as far as they're demanding, talk about this, talk about that, don't talk about this. It's, hey, I'm going to discuss what I want, with whom I want, when I want, and if people want to follow that, that's great. If they don't, there's 1,000 other things they can watch. But I'm finding that they're wanting to watch what I want to put out, and I like that. I really do. I was just about to have dinner. Okay, well, thank you.
Are the subscriptions going up, or is it just the views from the existing subscriber base?
I've got about 100 new subscribers in the last couple of weeks, and I've gotten my average viewing a month was about, because I wasn't even put out contact on it that much, it was about 17,000 views a month. My last month was 40,000, and I'm already at about 30,000 already for this month. So I'm gonna try to get 60 to 80,000 views this month. Maybe is my goal. Would be nice.
Maybe you need to get a big boil on your face.
Yeah, or
that
actually,
what
I need to do is just make stuff up as I go along. But apparently that sells. Apparently people like that kind of gossipy stuff. They don't. I really think there's 2 types of people out there that listen to YouTube videos. There's people listening out for the content because they like the topic, and other people just want to be entertained. And maybe there's some overlap there. I'm not saying there's not, but the entertainment doesn't necessarily imply that what they're listening to has any kind of factual reality. And that's not my style. That's not my forte, so to speak, of putting out content. As John knows, when I do a show on philosophy, I put out how I understand it to be most commonly understood in philosophy, and then I'll put my spin on it, my views, my subjective opinion on it, which is perfectly fine, right? I don't go ahead.
Well, there are sort of like fickle people out there who like the drama and like the and that's not to say that there's anything wrong with being entertained, but just as a as a for instance, we've got I don't know if it crosses the Atlantic to you guys, but we've got a program here called Love Island comes on every year, and basically they just put a load of professional, beautiful people on the island and pair them up. And there's always like an odd number. So there's always like 6 girls and 7 guys or something. And the person who ends up single at the end of the first week gets evicted. But then there's all this sort of like essentially bed hopping that's going on. And
I could never watch something like that. It would literally hold no interest to me.
It doesn't to me, but my wife, she's a nurse. She's, university educated, incredibly smart. We have great conversations, like deep, meaningful conversations. But this is just her sort of turn her brain off, chill, relax.
Nothing wrong with that. No, look, nothing wrong with that, right? That's her little escapism. That's what she enjoys. It wouldn't work for me.
Watch it. I've watched maybe 20 minutes of it in my entire life because I just happened to be sat in the room. And there's one scene where there's this like stereotypical blonde with the lip fillers and the fake boobs, and then the chiseled guy with the pec implants and stuff like that. And she goes, "Do you know what carpe diem means, Dwayne?"
Seize the day. Yes, I do.
And Dwayne goes, "No, I don't, Stacey. What does it mean?" And Stacey goes, "It means seize the day, Dwayne." And then Dwayne goes, "Oh, that's interesting. What language is that in?" And then Stacey goes, "I don't know, Dwayne. I think it's French or something."
It's Latin.
I feel the IQ points falling out of my ear and smashing on the ground like fucking glass.
I watched I watched a video similar to that, but it was 2 guys on a podcast. And let me say hi to everybody out there. Tom 34B, how you doing, my buddy? What time is it for you over there? Got Sonia Valley out there in 2 a.m. where he's at, and we got Armageddon Fire. So yeah, it's late night stream, just kind of chilling. But I watched this podcast, John, and it was the funniest because I don't know if this was a skit. I don't think it was a skit. It could have been. The best ones are you don't know if they're acting or not. You don't know if this was set up or not, right? Because it's so mind blowing. But I don't think it was. I maybe it was. I don't know. But did you see the skit where you had this one guy sitting on the couch with it in a podcast, thing where you have guys sitting on the couch and the guy sitting on another couch and they're just kind of talking to each other. And he asked the guy, "What's your favorite animal?" And the other guy says, he said, what animal you most scared by is what it was. And the guy said, "Fish." I guess he has a phobia of fish. And the other guy goes, "Fishes aren't animals."
Yeah.
and the guy's like, no, fishes are animals. He's like, "No, he's not." He's like, "Yes, fish are animals." He's like, "No, where do you ever have a zoo full of fish? Zoos don't have fish." And the guy's like, "An aquarium?" He's like, "No, that's where sharks and whales and other things are." And it was so freaking hilarious because this one guy was so convinced, or again, whether acting, I don't know. I really do wish I know if this was a real situation, but God, but it was so freaking hilarious because you know why, John? Because I've had the exact same type of arguments with people or similar on so many different subjects where I'm like, are you just being stupid at this point? What? But it was so hilarious because it's like,
completely
like,
I can't believe that was a legitimate interaction because how many times have I been speaking to a creationist who says something along the lines of "I'm not an animal."
So what are you, plants?
Well, this is what I mean. It's like, no, you are an animal. You're multicellular. You have an internal digestive tract. I mean, what?
Bipedal, chemoheterotropic. Yeah, you're an animal.
Yeah,
I don't know. They don't think they're an animal. You know why, John? Because there's a difference between brute animal and animal. We're not a brute animal. And so they have equivocation there of the term animal to mean not a brute animal, which is very, very disingenuous because, of course, we're animals. But yeah, what do you think you are? Now, do you remember the guy on Twitter who argues, and he's an atheist. He was not a prominent atheist, but he was had a lot to do with the Atheist Alliance International. We're having that go out of, and have massive corruption in AI. But remember John, what the hell's the last name? John Richards. He actually, and I'm not even joking, he argues that animals evolved from plants and that every biologist would tell you this. I'm like, really, John? Okay, I know a lot of biologists. Hey, biologists, did animals evolve from plants? And like, what are you, stupid? I'm like, well, according to John, this is like common knowledge. I'm like, they're like, no, animals of course didn't evolve from plants. That's stupid. Matter of fact, you can actually see. Go ahead.
what I was going to say is, I mean, we obviously have a common ancestor because we're all eukaryotic.
Right, sure. Yeah, but
But
we've
to
also
say that one thing that's just a rehashing of
but this is an
people
atheist.
saying
This
that
is not
we
a
evolved from.
creationist.
No, I know, but I mean, it's the same misunderstanding in terms of when somebody will go, I didn't evolve
That's
from
a pretty
no
big misunderstanding,
monkey.
man. I mean,
I
this guy's supposed to
completely
be
agree.
educated. He supposedly taught science, and I'm like, you supposedly taught science, and you think that animals evolved from plants? And he's like, well, what do you think multicellularity came from? What do you think about chloroplast and all this other stuff? I'm like, dude, we might have evolved, obviously, I think, from colony protistas, but colony protistas is a colony of non-animals. They're not animals.
But even then, we're eukaryotic cells where the plants have sort of chloroplast and chlorophyll. We are eukaryotic cells have the mitochondria. So I mean, we clearly have a common ancestor, unless you're prepared to say that eukaryotic cells developed in two completely different lineages in the way that, you know, Christians say that we were created in quote unquote kinds.
Right.
Which
and it's free. And real quick, Ennis Fried is a retired molecular biologist. He says, I can assure you that animals did not evolve from plants. I'm like, yeah, I agree. But of course, John thinks I'm an idiot, and he thinks that all biologists believe this. And so I was like, not this John in here, with John Richards on Twitter. I'm like, okay, find me one. He's like, go look, go ask any of them. And I'm like, I have. They think you're full of crap.
Yeah, so. I mean, basic biology that's just been fundamentally misunderstood.
But I love those types of discussions where somebody says something that's so fundamental, and you're just like Paris Hilton, wasn't it that she was, chicken of the sea? She's like, is this chicken? Was it Paris Hilton or was that Jessica Simpson? That's what it was, Jessica Simpson. Well, it says chicken of the sea. Isn't it chicken? No, it's tuna. Well, it's not tuna of the sea. I was like, no, chicken of the sea. It's a brand. But she said that was a skit, but she seemed like she really believed that. But I love that kind of stuff when somebody says something so authoritative as a fact and you're dumbfounded by it.
It is like this whole the Dunning-Kruger-esque, and actually in a lot of circumstances it would be unusually harsh to point to that person and laugh and say that they're stupid, as much as it is tempting.
There's people that make honest mistakes. I mean, we all do this. We're all human, so it can happen to the best of us. But certain things are pretty like, what?
Well, what I mean by that is we're all a product of our education, and we're all a product of our environment in some significant way. So if somebody's if the education system, through no fault of their own, has failed that person, then I would argue that it is incumbent, as you and I try and do, Steve, it is incumbent on the rest of us to try and explain in the most gentle way possible.
It's so hard sometimes, man. Like,
I completely get it.
I told the story where, my manager a while back had asked people, if I told you to meet me at 3:15, what time am I asking you to meet me? And they couldn't get it. They didn't know. And I'm like, my God, this is like fundamental stuff.
Isn't it like things like Burger King and McDonald's? We're gonna have like a ½ pound.
Yes, that happened.
And people thought that it was smaller than the £1/4 pound burger because 2 is less than 4, so they didn't buy it. So they just double stacked the £1/4 pounder burgers instead.
No, was it a ½ pound burger or a
quarter? Was it
I think it was the third pounder it's called. Yeah. And they didn't understand that a third pounder is bigger than a $1/4 pounder.
Yeah. But I mean, my daughter. I'll just relay this to you, Steve, because I'm sure you'll find it funny, tragic but funny, and then I'm gonna have to go. But in the last sort of 2.5 weeks or so, I've had to go into my daughter's school 3 times because she has brought home. They do like times table tests in the classroom, and then they get marked by the teacher and they bring them home so that we can see how they're doing and we can assist them at home to bring them up to speed, stuff like that. It makes perfect sense. Just good old fashioned teacher parent feedback.
Yeah.
I had the 10 times table, not last week, but the week before. And last week I had the 2 times table, both of which had incorrect marks by the teacher. My daughter had put for 0 times 10, she'd put 10. And then for 10 times 0, she'd also put 10. The teacher marked that as correct.
Yeah,
On the next,
I think I saw you post that on Facebook, didn't you?
No. I think
somebody did. I saw something similar to that though.
I think I mentioned it when we were talking to Ozian the other week.
Okay.
That was just the 10 times table I'd had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's since happened again with the 2 times table. Again, with the 0 times 2 and the 2 times 0, my daughter put 2 and the teacher marked it correct.
Wow. Yeah.
So I now have
Go ahead.
So I now have over 60 questions. The multiplication by 0 questions, of which there were 4 out of 60, have all been marked incorrect.
Yeah, I've seen something similar where a test question was like 1 divided by 0, and the correct answer is undefined, and they're like, looking for 0, but to anybody who knows math, that's not correct. 1 divided by 0 is not 0; it's undefined. And I think that if you don't start off with a solid foundation from math, then you're going to make those kinds of weird mistakes, and you have to understand how division is for a binary operator is defined.
Obviously, when you get into later mathematics, the answer definitely isn't 0 times 2 is definitely not 2. It's definitely not that.
Yeah.
And obviously, I can see the point about 2 times 0, 0 times 2 is essentially undefined because you're multiplying something by nothing. But multiplication is defined. 2 times 0 is 0. That's defined. Division is undefined. Oh, sorry,
for P over Q when Q is not equal to non-zero, equal to it's not when Q is 0, when it's non-zero, it's fine. But if P over Q, then it's undefined.
They start off. So in terms of this, my concern is: do you think, based on me getting that information, now there's 30 kids in our class, I'm looking at 60 questions. And all of the multiplication by 0 questions have been marked incorrectly. Mm-hmm. If I put that information in front of you, what would you conclude?
Well, what were they that the teacher's incompetent? But what were they expecting? What was the teacher looking for, as far as an answer?
Well, I presume this is my query. My daughter's got these questions wrong, and it's completely understandable how she's got those questions wrong because the initial how we initially teach maths, it's they'll say things like, "Oh, Bob has 4 apples and Kevin has 3 apples," So if there's a 2 on the page and a 0 on the page, a young child's brain, based on the way that we teach the very early maths, sees, well, there must be at least 2 because there's a 2 there. So that's why she's answered the way she has. But my concern is that the teacher's marked that correct, and she's marked it consistently correct on all of her. So my concern here is that the teacher's misunderstanding is the same as my daughter's misunderstanding.
Yeah, that might be right.
So when we say about people saying daft stuff, and I say this is where the education system has left them behind, the fact of the matter is that my kids, they're going to be well into college before they bring home homework or bring home concepts that Liv and I aren't equipped to be able to help them with. But there are a great many children in the world where if the school isn't up to standard, the parents are not they do not have the capacity to assist their children because the education system failed them as well.
It's not even so that it might be, it might be in some cases, but I got to tell you from personal experience, my daughter had some homework relating to graphs and functions, and I didn't understand the notation. I understood the notation in logic, but I didn't understand the notation, how they were getting to what they were called mapping functions. And I've seen it used in functional for mapping, but this was like a 10th grade math. And I'm like, what this is way too advanced for 10th grade. So I'm wondering what the hell they're meaning by this. And so I asked a friend of mine who has a master's degree in math, and he was like, well, yeah, I got to figure this out too. I don't know what they're figuring out. And then when he explained it, it was almost childishly simplistic, and both of us were way overthinking it. But the symbolism they used for it was just so not needed. And so they didn't teach the concept very well. And I couldn't help with their homework because I'm like, I don't even understand what they're asking for.
I had
so convoluted Common Core math in California.
So I've got my stepbrother. He turned 30 the other day, actually. I'm nearly 10 years older than him, and when he was doing his GCSEs, which is 15, 16, and he brought a piece of work that the teacher had marked had marked incorrectly, and he didn't understand it. And I can't remember the exact nature of the question now, but I looked at it and I was like, no, you're correct. The teacher has marked this incorrectly. And the physics teacher at GCSE, which the requirement to be a teacher at GCSE in your subject is that you are required to have a degree in that subject. You have to be degree qualified in that subject in order to be able to teach it at GCSE, because the GCSE is when you start introducing the much more complicated concepts. This teacher was marking the question that he had fundamentally misunderstood the difference between terminal velocity and acceleration.
Well, terminal, obviously, that's a big difference there. Terminal velocity is the velocity some object going to reach based upon atmospheric conditions and gravitational force.
Yeah.
But acceleration is your time rate of change of velocity. Just two different concepts.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It was just
in fact, at terminal velocity, your acceleration is 0.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, that's weird. Going back to a little kinematics here. So real quick, I wanted to, the lady kind of like may not known this because she was like, what? Yeah. So a long time ago, it was A&W, and they came out with the 3rd pound burger. And so 1/3 of a pound, and people were mistakenly thinking that 1/3 of a pound was smaller than a 1/4 pound, because 3 is smaller than 4, but they don't realize that 1/3 of a pound is one of 3/3. And so 1 of 3/3 is going to be a bigger slice, obviously, than 1/4 of 4. You have one out of 4 rather than 1 out of 3. So 1 out of 3 is clearly going to be a bigger slice on a pie graph or something. And it didn't do very well because people didn't know in America that 1/3 was bigger than a 1/4 pounder. I swear to God, that really did happen. That's America for you. America.
One of my things that I do as part of my job is I hire a lot of young trainees and apprentices straight out of school, and I've just taken on my newest batch. They all started last week, and we were filling out all the paperwork that you need to start a job, and one of the young kids flat out refused to put his bank account details down because he didn't want to get scammed. He didn't give them out.
Well, that's
so I rolled my eyes, and I'd let all the others kindly inform him that he probably wouldn't get paid either.
Yeah.
But, just that whole mindset with some of them. No, not doing that. I'll get scammed.
For when you're getting paid for a job?
What was he expecting? Like a paper check or something?
Some of them do, but nobody has paper checks anymore. They'll do what's called
questions I've had with these young people. They these young kids have this is, I've got to say, this is the most far-reaching batch. Yeah. 15 years ago it was much easier, but
no, I do believe that the kids are getting progressively stupid, and I do blame a lot, at least in America, to Common Core, because I've said well over a decade ago that Common Core is going to produce a generation of freaking idiots, and that's exactly what it did. Honest to God, did.
I still can't wrap my brain around the number of people that don't know what a logical syllogism is. Because
the same people that argue that is wrong when it starts with if. Hey, your argument's bullshit because it starts with F. Oh God.
Yeah, but my point is that if somebody's shilling bullshit, then one of the quickest and easiest ways to see if their argument, if the conclusion that they've come to follows from the argument that they're giving you, is to try and pick out some of the core premises in the barrage of nonsense that's been fired at you and turn it into a syllogistic argument and see if it makes sense.
Right. Well, that's an inductive process, even though you might not be able to get a deductive syllogism out of it, but the way you acquire new knowledge is by induction.
But what I mean is given the basic principle of does conclusion follow?
Yeah. A logical inference to get to a conclusion. But a lot of kids, they just don't understand critical thinking. They really don't. But let me ask you this. I got something for you, John, real quick. We're the 3rd planet from the sun, correct? Right? Mercury, Venus, Earth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're the 3rd planet from the sun, does it make every country a third world country? Dun.
Very good.
favorite.
Although interestingly enough, when I was going through my geography and economics and that sort of stuff at GCSE level, we were told that you're not allowed to call them first, second, and third world countries anymore because it's assigning, it's being sort of looking down on them and being judgmental. You've got to call them MEDCs and LEDCs, which is more economically developed countries and less economically developed countries. But when that it was one of this sort of like corrective languages that they tried to shove through the education system. But then when you come out the other end, nobody uses MEDC or LEDC.
Right.
So when you're talking to people, you have to revert back to the colonial language.
That's why I don't play any of these linguistic games. When any organization or group of people want to try to prescriptively change language or want to force certain uses of senses and connotations, it never really works out well for them.
I remember I came home from school and told my dad about that when I was like 16, and he goes, "Oh, so we're talking about like the development of third world countries," and my dad said third world countries, and I just been an ignorant kid at the time. "Oh, well, you don't call them that anymore, Dad. They're LEDCs now." And he goes, "What's that?" So less economically developed. He goes, "They don't have indoor plumbing. I'll call them what the fuck I like."
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, and I think that's the older generation. We just don't like to be told, oh, there's a new way of thinking. Okay, great. Use it amongst yourselves. But don't prescriptively retrofit it where people have learned something differently that you're going to get them to change their entire vernacular. Doesn't work that way. And in certain groups, you can use any terminology you want, any way you want amongst your peers and your friends and inside your group. But those are internal. They do not have any kind of influence external to that group. You have no onus to use a term to external that group. Now there might be benefits to it, and that could be certainly argued, but like the whole American atheist, I don't have to use their terminology. It's crap, and I don't.
Well, forcing language from the top down almost always fails.
Yeah, of course it does, because it's always bottom up. It's always going to be through organic usage. If you're, sometimes says they call it a royale. Yeah, a royale with cheese is what it is in the UK.
So, lady, since you're in, you're in the employment / recruitment end of the the tech industry. Are you seeing? Would you say you're seeing more or less in the last few years of sort of pronouns on emails and sort of progressive vernacular and sort of the attitudes that these younger people are having? Are they because I get the feeling that there's quite a lot of pushback, if not necessarily in the States, certainly in the UK. There's sort of like this slightly more of a conservatizing influence. I mean, we are known as Turf Island, so I suppose we do have that going for us over the States. But in your opinion, what way is it traveling in based on what you're seeing? Because you'll be at the cutting edge of this if you're employing people straight out of the educational institutions.
Yeah. So I notice there's a few Aussies in the chat. So I'm in the top end of the country where we're a little bit more, put it this way, they made Crocodile Dundee where I live. So we're very relaxed. We're very liberal, calling everyone the C word here too. So we notice it on the East Coast a lot. If people are applying from the East Coast of Australia, so the big cities, Sydney and Melbourne, we may notice the pronoun thing coming up. But yeah, no, not in our area. You'd get looked at sideways if you tried to correct someone on your pronouns.
It's a lot more of an American thing, and it's pockets of America. You'll see it a lot more in the Seattle area, Oregon, Northern California, Fresno, Sacramento. You'll see it a lot of maybe even parts of LA. But you go to the Midwest, no. Nobody's asking you your pronoun in Oklahoma, I don't think.
Have you seen that meme that's floating around where there's a bunch of people? It's just a series of short clips of people sitting down at hairdressers and barbers, and they sit down at the chair and they're looking into the mirror, and the barber stood behind them, and the barber goes, "Do I have your consent to touch you?" And then like the first person's like a purple haired woman with a nose piercing, and she goes, "Oh yes." And then there's another person who's sort of like a guy wearing like he's got like guy liner on and stuff like that, and they ask him that question, he goes, "Oh yes." And then then the next one's like this sort of like working class lad wearing a plaid shirt, and and the barber goes, "Oh, do I have your permission to touch you?" And he looks askance and he's like, "Yeah, of course." And then the barber goes, "And what are your pronouns?" And then the guy just turns around and goes, "Don't fucking touch me," and gets up and leaves.
Yeah. Well, and let me tell you why something like that. And you know what? And I don't doubt that it actually happens in real life. I don't doubt it. I bet there are shops like that and places.
Yeah, it was set up as a comedic skit. But
right. But let me tell you why it's stupid in reality. When you sit in that barber's chair, when you're entering the door and you sit there, there's already an implied consent. There's no reason to make it explicit. It just makes it uncomfortable. It is no need for it. And it's the same thing. Okay, we've been around. You're married. I don't know if ladies married or not, but all of us have had relationships, right?
Without a husband too. Without a lawyer, without a husband.
But you have relationships without a husband. Oh, okay. Not judging. But I'm serious. As Gen X, we're older, right? When the hell do you ever, you're in a necking session, you're making out, you're in the back seat watching some kind of movie in a drive-in or something like that. And sure, don't get me wrong, people can take that to an extreme. I get that. But nobody's ever said, can I kiss your ear? Can I kiss your neck? Can I put my hand on your leg? I mean, sure, maybe you might ask if I can hold your hand, but there's an implied consent that's just there where you're at least putting yourself in a position where there's a commonality there that people want to be together. It would be so awkward. And I don't even think anybody even actually does this. If there's anybody out there in these communities that really does every single step, if you were to sit there and ask for everything that you do when you have sexual relationship with somebody, they're not going to have sex with you again. Probably. I mean, why would anybody? I don't want that somebody doing that to me. Can I do this? Can I do that? No, just do what you're going to do. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you.
It would be so horribly inorganic. And also sort of like if you part of the social skill, the socialization of people around stuff like that is reading people.
Right. Absolutely. Sort of like, women love when you read them right, because they always say that men don't know what they're doing, right? That's
almost a rite of passage, isn't it?
Right.
Like for guys, for teenage boys and stuff, and they're sort of like, oh, does she like me? Doesn't she like me? Does she want me to kiss her? Doesn't she want me to kiss her? Well, the next generation coming through are just going to give you a fucking clipboard and a
checklist.
Yeah.
Like, lady, do you prefer somebody who just gets you and is able to have an experience with you organically and it's great, or sit there and go, can I put my hand on your, it's so awkward. And I can't imagine anybody really enjoying those types of situations. I just can't imagine it. I don't think that they do. I don't think that anybody subscribes to that, because it just doesn't make sense. Because again, I'm not trying to say that now. I know trolls are going to run with this. There is still consent. Obviously, if you're making out with somebody, that doesn't give you consent to do anything further sexually. Absolutely not. But when you're, you start off like the ear, go to the neck, and if they're responding to that, and clearly they're giving you signs, they'll let you know, right? That's how it's been since time began. And we're still humans. Men and women are still human. They still like some of the same things. And as a guy, I could not imagine a woman doing that to me. I would be very turned off. I'd be like, no, just stop. Just stop. And so if I'm going to say, hey, look, I'm going to be turned off by some woman every step of the way, asking their permission, I don't know why it wouldn't apply equally to a woman going, just stop. Just stop. It just seems weird to me. Am I wrong, lady? Am I off on that?
I always think romance has a large element of spontaneity to it. So if you break that spontaneous move to the next level, you just, it wouldn't feel very personal.
Well, it's a lot more difficult in for dating later on. I mean, and for people, because again, back in my day, if you liked a girl, you generally hit it, obviously, because you're like, oh, I don't girls. But I mean, the first time you're out on a date with somebody, and that first initial kiss, it would be magical sometimes. Those are things you just didn't forget. but it had to be at the right place, right time, knowing that the person you're with wanted that kiss and it wasn't, forced upon. Because again, people are gonna be like, oh, Steve's talking about not consent. No, let me make it very clear. Consent exists, but there's also implied consent too.
It feels like they're trying to protocol the spontaneity and the visceral nature.
Yeah, but that's why women go, oh, well, why aren't men asking women out anymore? Because they're scared to death that they might get it wrong.
Right. Well, I'm afraid I've got to go because I've got to get the kids to school. Otherwise, I'm going to be late. But nice talking to you again, Steve. Loved the Hernandez discussion. It was great. Sorry I missed it.
Thank you, buddy.
Catch up with you later.
Cheers.
You, see you, lady.
But yeah, I mean, it's just so funny because I had a friend that I was just talking about this the other day with, who lives in my area. I've known her like 20 years, and just weird how we kind of reconnected after years. And she's just a friend, strictly just a friend. But we might want to go out and do some video stuff. And it's kind of cool because I was like, hey, you know what? I could use this. I could use maybe doing some on the street kind of video stuff. But she's asking me, she's like, why don't, I'm trying to hit on a guy or something like that. And she's like, why are they so kind of standoffish kind of stuff? And it's just like, well, I mean, a lot of guys don't respond to it because they don't know how to respond, because they don't know if their person's being serious or not, or if they're misreading cues. And the fact is in this culture, and look, I've lived this because I was falsely accused of doing something that I didn't do, as you know. And so I've lived this, and I'm shell shocked by it because I never want a woman to be feel uncomfortable. And I don't want her to I don't want to give a woman an impression that I've said something inappropriate where they could use later on. It's just PTSD, I guess, at this point. But
are you going to leave this stream up, Steve?
Yeah, I think so. Why take it down?
Well, I'll put a declaration out here right now. I do not feel sexually harassed by this conversation.
Damn it! Am I not trying hard enough? What the hell? Do I have your consent to have a hangout?
Just putting it out there. So it's now sealed in perpetuity.
He had consent to join a StreamYards. No, it is funny because there's one person in my life that I do care about an awful lot that I've known for quite some time, and I talk to them frequently. And yes, one of these days we're gonna get out. But it took years, a year, 2 years, I don't know, at least over a year to really even open up to somebody. And because I know this person would never falsely accuse me of stuff. And so that was something that I really had to look for, because going through that, and it was with, Katie Joy's false allegations, going through that, it really taught me a valuable lesson that this could happen to anybody. This,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been single because of an allegation that I had to make on someone, which was true, and it did go through the courts. The person was jailed and they actually pled guilty, so we knew it was true. And masses amount of evidence to back it up as well, not just, some virtual room somewhere. And see, I've been a little bit gun shy myself. I haven't put myself out there for a long time. I'll plod along. I'll do my thing. If it happens, it happens.
Right.
But I'm not searching for it. Not searching for it at all.
There's nothing wrong with that. And I get it. I really get why people don't make an effort now. And I know another friend of mine. She wanted to have a discussion on this, dating in the 21st century, the 2024. Why is it so much different than it was years ago? And I was like, that's a great topic. I would love to have a discussion on that, which is kind of like what we're doing now. But yeah, I think it really is a lot different than it was back in, my formative years. Matter of fact, I have a friend of mine that I've known from high school. She's been long married, very, very happily married. We've known each other since 2009 on Facebook. And I've known her in real life because in high school, right? But we connected in 2009. And been friends with her ever since. One of those lifelong high school people, right? But in high school, just before I went in the Navy, I was 17, she was 18. For clarification, okay, but I was just leaving to go in the Navy, and we were just graduating, and we had our first kind of experience with each other, and we had ran into each other like a day or two later at the bank, at a Mercury Savings Bank in Boynton Park, California. And I was with my mom and she was with her mom, and it was very, very awkward. And I thought stupidly that it was because that she was feeling guilty or remorse or whatever. Come to find out years later that she thought I was going to ask her to like the prom or something like that. And she wanted to continue like dating. And I was too stupid to realize it. I mean, because I was so self-conscious, and I didn't know. I was, because she was like, is he blowing me off or this? And I was just shy. And I really thought that, she had a change of things. And my mind processed it completely different than it would have probably have years later. Right. But this is how you think. This is how insecurities work. And so I was like, man, I really should have taken her to the prom. And her response was, yeah, dude, you really should have. And I'm like, damn.
You always have moments like that, and it's like, I really didn't read those cues properly, did I? And what could have been? What could have been?
Right.
Yes.
It's like one of those, the road not traveled down. She still looks amazing. She's like in her 50s too, right? Looks really good for her.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No. Like I said, but it's just so funny because, like I said, we still get along so well. And it's just the way she put that. She's like, yeah, man, you really should have. I love these types of late night hangouts where you just kind of, ruminate a little bit and reminisce a little bit and just kind of reflect. I think that, looking back on memories is something we all have to do, have some self-reflection to keep us grounded, because, we all go through tough times. We all have stress. We all have things we're dealing with, but then you recognize, you get through it. You recognize that, man, there's some good times that people have had. And I love that. Yeah. So I really thank you all for hanging out. I'm not going to end this right now, but I'm saying, I really thank you guys for hanging out, and I needed this today. I really did. I really needed it. Like I said, it's nothing horrific or anything like that. Just stuff, nothing earth shattering, but a lot of little stuff builds up over time, right? I mean, it may just be pebbles, but pebbles can be heavy when you get enough of them, right? So,
yes.
Yeah.
This
Does anybody else want to come in? Tom or Chemo? Anybody else? But we're just hanging out. We're just chilling, talking about all kinds of random stuff. If there's a topic you want us to discuss, pick our brains. But I'm just loving this reminiscing stuff, because I'll never forget, man. I remember that day, like seriously, I remember I was just getting coffee and she was over there, and she was super cute back in high school, super good looking girl, or cute. I wouldn't not like your like classical blonde hot California girl, just cute button nose, short hair and freckles. She was cute, man. But anyways, like I said, I talked myself out of it. And I think a lot of guys do that. They talk themselves out of it when a woman is hitting on them or is interested in them, because they don't want to get it wrong. And I lived that experience, just before I went in the Navy. If I would have gone to the prom with her, I probably would have not gone to the Navy, though. I would have been a completely different trajectory in my life. And it was after I was in love with somebody else at the time. And it's funny because I want to say it was like a rebound, but it definitely was to get, getting my mind off the person I fell in love with. Right. But who cares? Right? I mean,
they always say the best way to get over someone is to get under someone. So.
Yeah, it was what it is, what it is, but the impetuous of youth, right?
If only we could all go back just for a little bit.
Knowing what you do now, it's so funny. I made a quote the other day. I said something on the lines of, you as you get older, you get more wise, but you have less time to utilize that wisdom. We're all getting older, and I turned 54 in 6 days. 6 days. And that's 1 year away from being a senior citizen. 55, be your earliest thing here that people consider to be senior citizen. And
don't say that, because I'm not coming far behind you.
Well, yeah, but over there, I don't know. In Australia, it's like 80. Because now you're a senior citizen, right? Because you guys live like 112.
We die.
And I don't know what it is, but Australian and Canadian get all the beautiful people. So it's not even until you hit about 60 or 70 you start even looking bad. It's weird. It's just genetics. you go to down south here, and by the time you hit 25, you look like death warmed over. So yeah, the deep south. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you get older and you feel the aches, you feel the pains, you feel the medical.
And I think that's where I want to revert to the youth, is to be able to bounce out of bed and not sort of lift one leg and put it out of bed and have every bone creak as you stand up. So,
or you get those Charlie horses in the middle of the night.
Oh,
I hate that. Oh, I hate that. You're just laying there, you turn over and you got a Charlie horse and you're like, and it hurts so bad you can't even scream. You're just like, oh, work it out. Or I get these cramps in my hand, and my hands will cramp up, and I have to like bend my fingers, and I'll be like, hey, can you bend my fingers? Like, oh, you big baby. I'm a total baby when I get sick, right? And people know I don't feel well a lot of the times, but I'm a big baby. And so when I get scratched or a bit, I got bit with something the other day on my arm, and I'm
Oh my god.
yeah, I'm going to Cano. I'm like, I got bit. My mic's falling apart. One second. Sorry about that. And I'm like, see, this is the bite. There's a bite there. Oh my god. I'm so big. She's like, oh my god, it's like a mosquito. What are you worried about? Malaria.
I've just been up this morning to the hospital because my son has appendicitis, and so he was admitted. And he said to me, I never imagined at 25 being curled in a ball on the floor, bawling my eyes out in pain. And his impression that as you get older you're tougher and so forth. And he was just complaining that he never thought he'd be rolling around on the floor crying in such pain, tears streaming down his face.
I had a issue the other day, and when I was talking to somebody, it wasn't streaming, but I was just talking to somebody like this, and I was like, hang on a second, I got to go. And it's just because of some things I'm having going on, it just was excruciating pain, and I had to wait for like a minute to pass. But it was like double over, and it really sucked. By the way, anybody know what a supernatural number is? Never heard of that one before, Adam. Sorry, don't know what a supernatural number is. But Tom's got to go work. Thank you, Tom. But yeah, the after 50, I mean, I'm telling you, my life has been way different, way different. So what is considered to be old?
65.
Oh God, that's 65 is retirement age. I mean, well, you can start drawing it out at 65 and a half, but it depends whether you should wait to 67 or not. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages. You actually get paid more in the long run if you draw early, but you get paid less per month. So, but they're on the actuaries and all that, they expect people to die by 70. So
don't even believe I'm 51.
Yeah, Cano's 51, and she's got this cherub face. She doesn't age or something. She's got, oh man, but let's talk about Cano for that. She sounds what, young?
Yes, yeah, she does.
Yeah, she's 51, but I gotta tell you, man, she's got this plethora of men. She's can I tell about Michael? Also, yeah, we're just gonna let it all out. So she's got this one guy. He's in jail, who's been just like calling her for like years, and I guess this guy has a pregnant baby mama or something like that.
15-year-old daughter.
Yeah, 15-year-old daughter, but his baby mama. Okay, so she's like 15, and he wants to keep seeing her, but also see Cano. Cano's like, she's like, no. She's like, no, you're in jail, and you have your baby's mama that you want to be with. No, we know. And so she's told me, she's like, look, he's getting out this month. If he shows up, I am not here.
I've been thinking if he was in jail, he wasn't seeing really anyone at all.
Yeah, but he's getting out this month.
Oh,
any day. And so she's been telling me, she's like, make sure he doesn't come over here. And I'm like, what am I supposed? This guy's a jacked up, like muscle bound dude that's been in hardcore prison. I'm like, what am I going to tell them? I mean, he knows we're just friends.
It might be time to move.
Yeah,
it might be time to move.
I'm telling you, it's just.
And the ex-boyfriend.
How old is that guy?
Ron.
No. I know. No, Michael.
He's 34.
Yeah, 34. 34. Robbing the cradle.
He's figuring.
Yeah, no, look at
You go, girl.
Yeah, see, you get a go girl. See, I get too young for you, Steve. Too young for you. See, I think 35 to 45 is optimal. 30 women in their 30s. Oh my God, they're at their peak. They're at perfection.
But I met him when he was 24.
Yeah, she's known him for quite some time. But don't you think that like people in their 30s really become under themselves? I really do. I think that, you know, sure, people can be very attractive in their 20s, but they really don't have the essence of themselves of who they are and their true beauty until around 35. And maybe a few years older. That's just me, my personal opinion.
With that.
Yeah.
No, I'd go with similar thoughts.
I can't even. I look at a 21-year-old and I'll be like, "What the hell would I talk about?" You know, I mean, I appreciate beauty, but it's just like, you know, would you date a 20-year-old? Oh hell no! Why? What are you gonna? Why? I'd be bored out of my mind. Couldn't take them to a club. You know, I'd be wanting to be talking about what I want to talk about, and they'd be talking about Baby Spice or something. You know, I'm like, you're, and I swear to God, they don't even know anything about my music. They don't even know about anything. Even I swear to God, it's so frustrating. I know a lot of young people, and it's just, I'm sorry, but everything I thought was second nature isn't. You know, so I don't know.
No.
Why are they still talking about 0.9 repeating? Yeah, I made a community post on it. Yes. I'll have a hangout another time where I'll be showing people once again why 0.99 repeating is equal to 1. Because I think it's coming around again, and every year I kind of do an annual 0.99 repeating equals 1 kind of thing at least. But it is the same number. That's a fact. It's an objective fact. It's not open for interpretation. It's not up for evaluation. It's not up for opinion. It is absolutely a mathematical fact that can be proven. So I like stuff like that. I like facts, you know. And
I like at our age, Steve, is the fact that the things that have moved so fast, you know, when we were kids, with the post you put the other day, you know, about the antennas, and I commented that, you know, I was the remote control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, flick on the back of the ear, get up and change the channel. You know, and we've seen such changes in technology over time. You know,
oh yeah, when you stand there on the rabbit ears and you're like, "Don't move." You found that sweet spot with a VHF antenna. Don't move. You know, people remember that. Yeah, when you had tinfoil and you're like, you had to get that antenna in the exact position and stand there for 30 minutes, you know, while somebody else watched TV. Those were the good days.
And I used to love turning it off and watching, you know, where it just slowly went into that dot in the middle to see how long that dot would stay there before the tube went totally off.
Yeah, do you know what caused that?
No, I never really thought about it.
Yeah, well, those were okay.
I feel it would have something to do with the tube and the way it was.
Yeah, it was. It was the old cathode ray
projected.
tubes, right? The old cathode ray tubes had an anode and a cathode, and they had a beam of electrons. And the beam of electrons through these deflection magnetic plates would scan at 60 hertz interlaced. And so it would scan a line, it would skip a line and scan again, skip a line, scan again, and then it would go back and scan the line that it missed, and it is called interlace. This is why when you have like 1080i, it means 1080 interlace rather than 720p, which is progressive. So it scans and skips. And so in a cathode ray tube, when you have the TV on, it would be scanning, but as the magnetism stopped that electron beam from going up and down on vertical and horizontal deflection, where is it going to end up? Straight, which is the center. Isn't that interesting? I don't know. I'm just a little crap that I know for some stupid reason. You know. Right, John?
No, I just like watching it go to the dot.
I have to say I knew that there were cathode ray tubes, but I didn't really know how they worked. To be honest, I'd never really thought about it. It was
I used to love electronics. I really did like electronics. My granddad was he owned a TV repair shop, so I had TV repair books. He let me go like throughout the entire shop and say, hey, he's like, take whatever you want. It's been closed down for decades. He's like, take whatever you want. So I got resistors and selenium rectifiers and capacitors and wires, and all stuff to make breadboard type projects. And I had that stuff for years. Years I had a lot of that stuff.
Well, and it's sort of like like the cost of stuff and how repairable things are, replaceable things are. We've become we've got such an attitude change. It's like I know obviously the housing market these days is mad, but the relative cost of things compared to what they used to cost. I mean, my parents bought their first house for £10,700, and that was in like 1977 or something. And it was just a 3-bedroom, semi-detached, decent-sized garden, 2-car driveway, just a pretty sort of work into middle class, decent family home. They spent £400 on their first television set in the same year that they bought the house. That's like the equivalent of my wife and I spending like £28,000 on a TV in proportion to the value of the house.
Color TVs were expensive.
I know. Obviously, so that like the proportional cost, and then they spent like £200 on like a hi-fi set and stuff. But it's I mean, I work in the trades. I do specialise in timber frame building, and the lad who works for me, we're old school friends. There's a guy he knows who buys up all the old tools from like old hardware shops that have closed down, and I keep meaning to go there because the tools that Matt brings out for like when he's doing joinery and things, these are old school timber handled, proper case hardened steel chisels, screwdrivers, just the beautiful like hand tools that were built as if the person was going to be using this tool from now until the day they died, and it was going to be handed on to their kids, as opposed to the Chinesium shit you get from DIY stores these days. So yeah, I mean, the attitude around building to last has changed dramatically, and I really don't like it.
It's worse than that because there's something called planned obsolescence.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
My dad used to tell me about that all the time. They used to get because he was a mechanic, and they started getting things like grooves that were cast into like engine blocks and stuff like that. And he'd be like, "What are these for?" And they go, "Oh, it's to help with lubrication." No, it's not. Increases the surface area, increases the wear.
Well,
reduces the lifespan.
It reduces the lifespan. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Even my first, when I left home, the very first washing machine I got myself was obviously a second hand, because when you first move out of home, we're not all rich. And it was just an old mechanical, nothing electronic about it, washing machine. That thing lasted me another 18, 19 years.
Oh, yeah.
And it was already second hand when I brought it. You know, it's already about 10 years old when I got that. Since then, I've had 4 washing machines.
Mm-hmm.
Like that thing only gave up the ghost as I approached my 40s. And, you know, in the last 10, 11 years, I've gone through another 4 washing machines.
This kind of TV that... Well, this colour TV that I mentioned that my dad bought, it was a Sony colour TV. Like I say, he bought it in 1977 or 78. I was born in 1984, and he finally replaced it when I was 17.
Well, probably because we went digital and the analog TV wouldn't work.
There's a couple things. The earlier type of things that General Electric would put out and things like that nature. One, they were built with much sturdier materials, cast iron, stuff like that, stainless steel molding. And they were built to last. They were not built where you buy one and then, you throw it away when it stops working. What it was you have fixable parts, but it was made to last. But when something newer came out, that one would go down to hand me down to somebody else, right? Hand me downs were real big in those generations, and so they knew that somebody would get that old washer and dryer, and somebody would then buy a new one, and it would just be this repetitive passing down of stuff until it does obviously become so obsolete. But we had, washer and dryers last a long time. My mom had a sewing machine, telephone. We had a classic telephone, dial telephone with the horn on the receiver, like the little white cone horn. That thing was antiquated from, I don't know, it had literally a square plug, 4 plugs in it. and the conduit we had that type of plug in it, but you'll never see that nowadays. You'll never see that.
In the interest of being fair to the ingenuity of the human species, I suppose it is worth pointing out. I mean, for example, I've got a nail gun, a Milwaukee first and second fix nail gun. I will timber frame all day with it. It rapid firing. I think it fires like 3 nails a second or something, and these are like 4-inch long ring nails. My hammer will absolutely outlast that nail gun. But I can't put 3 nails a second in with it. So, and it's just by nature that technology does become more complicated, and therefore it does become more costly to replace. And so I do get. I mean, you've just got to look at like the like the chip shortage that we're having at the moment. Because there are so few places on the planet that can set up as it stands right now for producing these chips. So, but we could definitely make things more durable than they need to be. There is no,
but they're not going
But
for
then
that.
there's no market.
They're going for cheap. Like look at like power tools. The Roby power tools is a big thing, right? They're very cheap. You go to any hardware store and get these Roby power tools. They're not built to last. They're not like a Black & Decker that you're going to get. My dad had a crosscut reciprocal saw that he had his entire life. This was a workhorse. I don't remember the model number, but it was a very just well built type of crosscut saw, and he loved this thing. He would never part with this thing. And after he passed, I wanted somebody to be able to use it. It wasn't no longer functional, and I sold it for a couple $100 and under the condition that it would be used. But this was just my dad must have had this since the 50s. I mean, it just was so well made, even though the wire, it was the only thing they wanted with it was the wiring. The wiring wore out, because it breaks down. Yeah, it just broke down, but it was an easy fix to put a new wire in. But the mechanics of it still worked amazing. I remember my dad would be using it when I was growing up.
That's also got a lot to do with the person using the tool. You see such a lot on sites where people are using a tool that they're trying to cut like railway sleepers with a 160mm diamond blade or something, and it needs a big chunky chop saw on it. You can't be cutting it with a pissy little saw like that. And people just put so much stress on the tools these days. And the other thing as well is the fixings we use. If you're using a tool driver or an impact driver and you're driving in you're driving in like an 8-inch coach bolt, you would have put a coach bolt in with a socket set years ago. Now you just put your socket on the end of your impact driver and drive it in. The amount of torque is ridiculous. So these tools just don't last forever, but they're built for convenience. It's sorry. But the reason I bought the nail gun that I have, I didn't really need it. I could have continued, you can buy the impact driver for 120 quid and you just use screws. But I bought the nail gun, and the nail gun cost about 700 quid with a set of batteries. But the 4-inch ring nails that I put in, I can get a box of 4,000 for about 40 quid. Whereas a box of 120mm, a box of 120mm screws cost me a tenner. By the time I got to the end of my first box of nails, I'd saved myself what the nail gun cost in screws. So it made economic sense, But like the attitude towards all of these things it changes.
I do want to correct something real quick. It wasn't a crisscross saw; it's a radial arm saw. A DeWalt. It was a DeWalt radial arm saw. If you've ever used one of those, it has the thing you pull out, and so it was a radial saw. It wasn't. I don't know why it came with crisscross, but
yes. So what you mean? So it was on a slide, and then the saw circular blade that.
Yeah, it was. I don't remember if it was a 9-inch or a 10-inch blade, but it was a.
Yes,
radial,
that's what we'd call a chop saw, a sliding chop saw.
Sliding, yeah, and it was green. It was the most common DeWalt radial arm one they ever made. Like, so it wasn't worth a lot of money because they produced a lot of them, but somebody had bought it for like $200 because they even know how old this is. Once you replace the wiring, it would be great for a a shop, and because nowadays, you pay, $800 for the same thing. Why not pay $200 for a used one? And all you got to do is replace the wiring and the blade, and it works good as new. Everything else was fine on it, right? Because they knew DeWalt really made exceptionally good stuff,
There's a guy I've been following on TikTok actually, and he goes out and gets the really old General Electric fridges from the 40s and 50s, and he brings them back to his workshop and just gives them a bit of a scrub up, regasses them, does a little bit of rewiring, but hardly does anything to them at all. But it's the paint jobs that he does on them. He paints them in fantastic colours and so forth. And he sells these fridges now $3,000-$4,000. And as he says, you'll get another 50 years out of this fridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it just needed the regas.
They're a little more power consumptive.
Yeah.
They're not energy efficient and they're not green, but I mean,
you're not allowed to sell fridges like that in the UK anymore. It's twofold reason. It's the CFCs. But also we had. I don't know if you do. Do you have a drink called Tizer in the States?
No.
So Tizer is like a fizzy apple drink that was for sale here. I've not seen it for years actually, but their company got raked over the coals because they had one of these sort of like American. It was like Tizer in the fridge, and it was like a glass-fronted American style freezer, and it showed you a load of kids crammed in it. The joke being that the kids had climbed into the fridge to get to the Tizer, but before these sort of type of lift handle fridges were banned, there were instances where kids got locked in fridges and suffocated themselves.
Yeah.
They rip the seals off them now when they dump them.
You have to take the actual doors off.
But you're not allowed to sell them in any fridge that's sold in the UK. You have to be able to push the door open from the inside. So all of the fridge doors that we have now, they're all magnetic seal, so that you can just push it open. There's not a latch that can lock you in.
Right, and that makes sense actually for safety. As far as the CFCs, I think a lot of that was BS.
I'm not convinced that mattered.
Yeah, because the CFCs, for one thing, have to travel to the upper atmosphere to even have any effect, and I don't think that the CFCs cause a lot of damage. Methane from cows produce a lot more than any CFC. So,
well, in order to get that high up into the atmosphere, wouldn't it have to have somehow take on like an electromagnetic charge and get
dragged up some kind of transport. It would have to have some kind of transport up there because then you get exposed to ultraviolet radiation, which is high enough in energies to break down those CFCs to greenhouse type gases, right? So, but again, I think it's completely overblown. But I think a lot of these things are completely overblown. Do I accept global warming? Yeah, climate change, real. But when you had people 20 years ago, they're saying that Florida was going to be underwater in 20 years, clearly they were wrong. Do I think that there's going to be flooding in coastal regions within the next 100 years? Absolutely. Do I think that there's going to be, deserts that increase in drought? Absolutely. Do I think that it's going to be uninhabitable? No. But do I think in 500 years from now, there's going to be some major problems? Absolutely.
I'm definitely skeptical about how much we are responsible for. It is a molecular impossibility that we're not responsible for some of it. That we can't exist on this planet and not have an impact. It would be
right. But I think they've recognized that anthropomorphic gas, anthropogenic gas is the main culprit for it. Now, solar cycle absolutely has an effect, and you can't do anything about that. But if you look at the anthropogenic gas, it is absolutely a correlation going back to the 1800s for almost a 1.8 degrees Celsius increase. There's no sense about that. There's an absolute correlation.
I think where the argument falls for me is yes, we are having an impact. I'm sure we are, as I stated. The bit where I'm skeptical about it is where you've got the people that are going, oh, it's going to be like a species killer. I'm like, we survived the last. We survived the last ice age with pointy sticks and animal fur clothing. We'll be all right.
I don't think it's a civilization
we'll adapt.
killer. Yeah,
we'll adapt.
Yeah,
but also it's the case is we have seen some pretty extreme weather within our not. I mean, when I say recent history, I don't mean like last year. I mean like within the last hundreds and thousands of years. I mean the Romans were growing grapes in York 2,000 years ago for wine. And they found Roman seagoing ports in the south coast of England that are 20 miles inland. So, we have seen crazy sea level changes within our sort of recent to ancient history.
Yeah.
So when people are saying that the sea level is going to rise by this much or drop by this much or the temperature is going to change by this much, yeah, completely understand that, completely get it. We are obviously going to have been having an impact, but do you want to, is the amount of damage that you're going to prevent for the economic damage that you're going to do?
Right, exactly. That, and I think that's a big point, because I think that we're doing more damage economically right now than we are anything else, because some of these are all, some of them really just ridiculous stopgap measures. When climate change changes, it's something a million years from now. Sure, there's going to be completely different probably climate than we have now, but we'll be an adaptive species to adjust for. Most of a million species only last a million years or so. Some can be more, but I mean, human race might not exist because it's just a species that's doomed to die out. We will as a species die out. It's not a matter of when or if, it's a matter of when, because mammals, their species die out. They become a different species. So we'll speciate again, and we could have a lot of different traits than we have now, right? Much bigger eyes, much bigger, ears, much shorter. It doesn't matter, whatever the selective pressures are, but a human a million years from now, it's going to be different than a human there is now. And I think it's going to be more notable than it would be from a human a million years ago, because the climate change. I do believe that part is true.
Assuming we're destined for non-existence in one shape or form, no matter what happens.
Right.
But as long as we're dealing with the physical world or something close to it, if we become, as Musk wants us to be, a multiplanetary or a multi-system species within our galaxy, then if based on the entropic principle, that the last human being is at best going to die on the inner surface of Dyson sphere around a white dwarf.
Sounds very Doctor Who-ish.
And
we're not going to get that far. I don't see, man. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but unless we really revigorate physics and get some kind of strange type of physics resulting from Accuberry bubble or dark energy, dark matter, whatever, we're not going to be able to go to anywhere near to explore the galaxy, more or less outside the galaxy. I think we're doomed way before we have the technology to do that as a species.
So
it comes back to our conversation before. I think if some of the standards of education don't pick up, we're all destined to be winners of the Darwin Awards.
I'm telling you, and I absolutely am convinced of this. We're losing in the scientific arena across the board, to every other country, and even them, they're not putting out the STEM as they once were. We're fostering a generation of idiots. Where are going to be these people that know how to do the engineering things, that know how to do the medical things? People are not going in these professions as much. One, insurance rates, like for medical professions, is super high. It's a lot of education, a lot of training that they get into debt for. A lot of people are not becoming doctors anymore. A lot of people are not becoming professional engineers any longer.
In the case that our pursuit and engineering excellence needs to scale with the technology that we're deploying if we want to be developing more advanced technology. Yes. I mean, if you 150 years, right? Sort of cutting edge technology was like the internal combustion engine, and it was a novelty at the time. But capturing the rotary motion and from an internal combustion engine and turning it into a vehicle or a mode of transport or to power industry, was an absolute. It barreled us up to where we are today, and then we go on to things like jet technology, and But my point is that how many people have a comprehensive understanding of how an internal combustion engine works? I don't mean
not many. Mechanics, obviously, people that have studied physics, but I could guarantee it, John. If you go to the average high school person, right, kids maybe 15, 16, they're not going to know, and maybe they shouldn't need to. But even going further, go to a college. Go to a local college and you ask them how a two-stroke engine works, or a four-stroke, or the difference between an inline and V8. They're not going to know any of these things.
So the school I went to, the college I went to, is the same college that Sir Frank Whittle went to, who was the well, it depended on whose version of history you believe, was either the inventor or the coincidental co-inventor of the jet engine. And we actually had a model of or one of the prototype engines in the physics building at our college, and we had a bunch of students, engineering students, visit from another college down the road, and my physics teacher wasn't expecting them to be there. Nobody had told him that they were visiting, so he was casting around for something for them to do until he could get down and address them. And he told them to go downstairs into the lobby of the physics building and just start sketching the Whittle engine, his ramjet engine. He comes down after the end of our lesson and finds all of these engineering students from the other college drawing. There was also another engine in another case on the other side of the lobby, which was a 4-cylinder internal combustion engine from a Metro Quest. It still had the gear shift on it because it showed you the whole drivetrain through the gearbox. Mm-hmm. And they started sketching that instead of the jet engine.
Oh, God.
This was a class engineering students who couldn't tell the difference between an internal combustion engine and a jet engine on a plaque.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand gearing. As a matter of fact, one of the things you have to take when you take the ASVAB, there's a mechanical portion on there that asks about gears. If gear goes this way, how it's going to affect other gears. And I got a perfect score on my ASVAB, so I could understand, gearing. But when you actually learn about turbines, and in turbines, you have to learn a lot about types of gearing. Here, local gearing, what's called pressure velocity compounding, Rateau stages, how steam will lose, energy going through one part of the nozzle, increase your kinetic energy, decrease your potential energy, until you exhaust you take all the energy out you can of that steam. So you're left with a high pressure system at the beginning and a low pressure system at the end. And the result is condensing out of water in the condenser, right? But that has to be utilized through gears to slow it down, to turn the shaft of the boat of the ship, because when you have a turbine spinning at thousands of miles per hour rotating, you don't want your shaft going thousands of miles an hour rotating. You want that in torque. Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to have a gearing ratio. And by the way, this is a fun fact: the gearbox that we had, the reduction gears, were rented. They're so expensive and so precisely milled and made that they're too expensive to buy for the military. So the military rents them. I'm not even joking.
And when the ship's decommissioned, you pull them out and put them in the next ship.
Yeah, because you reuse them, or you get them back to whoever you got it.
That's amazing, given the amount of money that the American military is deploying.
Yeah, they're still good. They do have a shelf life, because every reduction gear, no matter how perfectly you maintain it, is going to have wear, and you're going to have filings come out of it. But you do inspections annually, and then you have to inspect the gearbox, which is a whole rigmarole, because you think people are meticulous with OCD. The area around a gear, the reduction gears, is pristine. Anything that goes in there is logged, right? Because if you left a torque wrench or something in the reduction gears, you're going to prison. You're just destroyed, something that's worth several hundred millions of dollars, probably. So yeah, everything was logged, going in and out. I've only worked on the reduction gears once when I was in the Navy. Was not a fun experience. But you get to look in, at least see that these reduction gears are just amazing how they work to get that torque for that shaft.
Most of the aircraft carriers, the subs, and a lot of like the bigger support vehicles, aren't they nuclear powered these days, or are they jet turbines?
No, most. I mean, well, a lot of them are either nuclear, what's called gas turbine.
Gas turbine.
Right. I never worked on a gas turbine ship, so I don't know anything about them. But I will tell you that I could pretty much tell you from a guess that the secondary side from a gas turbine plant and nuclear is probably going to be almost exactly alike. There really probably isn't much distinction. It's just the heat source is different.
Yeah, I mean that's the primary. It's all turning. It's all generating steam to turn a turbine and recapture. Yeah,
every steam plant works on the principle of make something hot, get energy out of it, turn something to make electricity. That's basically.
I still can't wrap my brain around why we're not making more use of nuclear. I mean, obviously this is your field, Steve, so you'll probably be able to.
What was my field?
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. Like of anywhere where you have formal training and expertise, as much as you're very knowledgeable around like the philosophy and logic. This is where.
So the actual thing I was actually trained for was nuclear. Yeah. Well, I think the reason is because there was back in the 80s, there was this big push after the Vietnam War to love peace and all this other stuff, that they really had people scared about nuclear power. The movie, the China Syndrome came out, and people really thought, if this reactor has a meltdown, it'll go all the way to China, which is clearly not going to happen. But we realized that meltdowns can happen. We
have had a few examples of spectacular failures. Obviously, there was Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and then later years Fukushima as well. But the technology being deployed in all of those was like decades old.
Fukushima had good technology, but you can't plan for natural events, right? So in every case, there's been a disaster. It's either been because of a natural event or human error, or poorly designed, and then human error. Chernobyl was poor design. But 3 Mile Island was not a bad design. It's just the operators didn't know what the hell they were doing. They didn't know what they were looking at, because in the 3 Mile Island accident, there was a computer that would print out these numbers, and these numbers came from what's called thermocouples. And a thermocouple is just basically a little piece of equipment that tells you the temperature of something. Mm-hmm. And it works because a dissimilarity between how metals react with heat, how they bend, and so. If these metals would bend differently by the way they deflect, it would give you an indication of what the temperature would be. And so, because you don't want to stick your hand in something to get a temperature, you want to have ability to read it, and so this computer would process this information, and all of a sudden, because of a loss of a coolant from one of the pumps, the reactor started getting very warm, and it got so hot on these thermocouples because they disabled the emergency coolant for forced coolant. They disabled that for whatever reason, and they changed the lineup, and there's all this other stuff, but they weren't understanding that there was no water going in the core, and that's what's called a partial loss of coolant accident. And the numbers got so high that the computer produced a question mark, and they didn't know what was going on. They just thought it was computer error. They thought
they basically they got so hot that it destroyed the thermocouplers.
Correct.
It was the computer was looking for essentially a device that was no longer there.
Exactly.
So it gave an error.
They didn't know what was going on.
And then they ended up, I presume, because of their misunderstanding of what the thermometer was, for all intents and purposes, the thermometer was telling them. The thermometer had been destroyed. They misinterpreted that reading, so did fuck all, and ended up with a runaway reaction that they couldn't control.
Correct, and it caused a partial exposure of the core to air. You always want to keep that under. You want to keep the fuel rods or fuel plates in water. You don't want them exposed to the air. One that even if everything's okay, you don't want to do that because of oxidation. But the main thing is that water is a very good conductor of heat, and so water will take that heat away from that the uranium reaction, the fission reactions going on in the fuel rods that air doesn't have. Air is a very bad conductor of heat, and so if you cannot radiate that heat away and take that heat away, what's going to happen to the fuel rods? They're going to get really hot and melt. That's what happened in 3 Mile Island. Chernobyl was a completely different story, though. Chernobyl was a sodium graphite cooled reactor, and there's something called the positive coefficient of reactivity, which basically means that as the reactor gets hotter, the moderator gets to the point where the molecules get further away from each other, and you get less reactions, and so it wants to shut itself down. In other words, cooler water being dense is going to have a greater reactivity input to the core because you have the molecules being closer together. You have what's called less mean free travel path. These neutrons get thermalized more. Thermalized neutrons, uranium happens to like thermalized neutrons, slower neutrons. It has more fissions. More fissions is more energy. There you go. So these reactors with a positive coefficient of reactivity, they didn't work that way where the hotter it got, the harder it was to control. Nope, just the opposite. In a pressurized water reactor with a negative temperature coefficient of reactivity, the hotter the water gets, the less energy you get out of it. And so it will automatically shut itself down just because of physics. It's called inherent stability. But it comes at a price. It is more expensive to produce systems like that. And in Chernobyl, they wanted power. They didn't care about the safety aspect. And then they were running some experiment where they were running the reactor at a very low reactor output, and they wanted to see what would happen if they shut off the power altogether. They scrammed the reactor. How long the city, and I don't remember the name of the city in Russia, wasn't Chernobyl, it was some other city that was applying power to.
It's Pripyat.
Pripyat, thank you. You've looked into this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like I know what I'm talking about this because I literally did something with land on this particular topic, and we actually had to learn about some of the stuff. But
I can tell you now, you're beyond my understanding of nuclear physics by some margin at this point.
But this is what was happening. They wanted to run, and they wanted to see how much power could just be off the spin down of the turbines, right? But what they weren't understanding was in reactor physics, and this is something that you do learn in nuke school. When you're operating at a low criticality, that's the most unsafe time of the reactor, is when you're at startup, or what's called point of adding heat. This is where you have what's called prompt criticality, where reactors are going critical just off the prompt neutrons, which are neutrons that are instantly produced through the fission, rather than from what's called delayed neutron precursors. And what a delayed neutron precursor is, I have a fission, I have these fission fragments that come out of it, whether it be samarium, promethium, technetium, whatever the fission fragment is. Those later on will decay and produce other neutrons that can later on be thermalized, and that will cause more chain reactions. And there's a slight delay in those neutrons that come from the delayed neutron precursors than prompt neutrons. And that's good. We would not be able to have reactor power if that wasn't a fact of physics. But when a reactor goes critical just off prompt neutrons, it makes it nearly impossible to control that. You have a runaway thermal effect. And so at the point of adding heat, where we have this rise of temperature of the water, and you're in the startup rate using what's called startup rate equation, when you're looking at those numbers, you have to be very careful how much reactivity you add to the core to not prevent prompt criticality. This is why you have a cold water accident. When water is super cold, or just even cold, and it's dense. And if you were to send dense cold water into a pressurized water reactor, knowing that it's going to thermalize more neutrons, what's going to happen? You're going to have
you massively increase your reaction.
Exactly. You have this what's called K effective go up over 1, where you have more neutrons being produced than are being caused fission.
So basically, the act of dumping cold water into it in order to try and control what was a runaway reaction was the exact opposite of what it should have been doing.
It's very, very, very bad.
Preheat the water or something.
At higher temperature, the effect's not as prevalent, obviously. But when you're at startup and you're at the point of any heat and you have that cold water accident, it is the worst possible thing to happen. And so in Chernobyl, that graphite sodium cooled moderator, they had no chance. They had no chance because they were operating at this condition that they should have been operating at. And once they scrammed the reactor, what happened was it had built up what's called xenon. And xenon is a neutron absorber. And after you scram a reactor, you have to wait a couple of hours for that xenon gas to dissipate. There's other things that other gases do. I think it's promethium that you have to wait, or strontium. But mostly it's the xenon that you have to wait for it to decay in order to start the reactor up. If not, let's see if you can figure this out, John. If I want to start up a reactor after I've just shut it down and it's produced this large quantity of this gas, xenon, that has neutron absorption, I have to compensate for that. And I have to give the reactor more neutrons. Well, one of the ways to do that is expose the fuel more to the moderator and have more chain reaction go. right? So if you want to do that, you can raise rod heights to do that, right? And
So
when you
this
start,
is when you say you raise your rod height, this is removing your control rods further out.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, or put in depending on your reactor.
Yeah.
But you really want it to be out. The reason, well, I'm not going to give the specificity because it goes in control our dive mechanisms. But basically, yeah, you have to expose the more fuel. Well, by exposing more fuel, one, you lower the lifetime of the reactor because now you're using more fuel that you didn't have to wait. So the only time you should be ever start up reactor is an emergency situation. You always have to wait that xenon, and so they have this build up of xenon. They didn't realize this, and so they're just doing this cycles. They're starting up the reactor, but each time they have to wait more and more time. Well, they should be waiting more and more time, but if not, they're not. They're actually just raising rod height more. They're just exposing more of the fuel, and eventually got to the point where it just had a runaway effect, and that caused the graphite to burn, and it just blew the pressure off the pressure vessel. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's basically in a nutshell, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you really want to design where the control rods.
It's xenons.
What's that?
It's xenon, is it? It's not an explosive gas, is it? A gas.
No, it's a noble gas. Xenon 148.
Yeah, no. What am I thinking of? Because there is a version of xenon that's explosive.
I've never seen that. Xenon is like as a halogen, or you mean in the halogen.
No, I know that, but the reason there's like xenon, it's like xenon tetroxide or something.
Oh, I mean, yeah, even the most inert stuff, some are will combine with other stuff.
Yeah,
but one thing that does build up is hydrogen.
Yeah.
And that's what this was a hydrogen explosion because water disassociates. H2O will disassociate and produce hydrogen and oxygen, and so hydrogen will explode. Yeah. But anyways, like I said, it was mostly user error, bad design and user error. Yeah.
So isn't there they're talking? I mean, and again, I have no conception of how they operate, but they're talking about sort of like these smaller modular salt thorium reactors.
Yeah, they were supposed to be popular back. They were supposed to be like the thorium reactor is supposed to like be in everybody's neighborhood, like because thorium is not as energetic as uranium. It's not energy dense, but it's supposed to be safer. Yeah, so it was like, oh, have a thorium reactor in your backyard.
Wasn't there that idiot? Well, I say that idiot, incredibly smart but idiotic person who was pulling all of the radioactive components out of smoke detectors, and he ended up irradiating himself because he was basically trying to build a nuclear reactor in his garden shed.
Yeah, and somebody points out, and this person's exactly right. Gas turbines don't produce steam. That is true. It's basically you have a burning and exhaust, but the heat aspect of it is pretty much the same. You have a flow through the gas turbine, and again, I never studied gas turbines, but you have the high pressure and the low pressure area like you do on a steam turbine.
Yeah, so you're using some kind of gas to generate rotary motion, which
right. It's in that case, it's actually fuel.
They actually made gas turbine cars.
Yeah, or you can have a combustion engine with a turbine boost. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. There's a motor museum. There's a motor museum near my house, and they have a concept gas turbine car from like the 70s or something.
Yeah,
it's proper. It looks proper like stereotypical like 1960s Cadillac space vehicle. It's very, very cool to look at. It didn't get any miles to the gallon, and apparently it was wicked fast. But taken off of the never was seriously considered as a viable fuel source because it was just so horribly inefficient for the scale that it was operating at.
Yeah. Well, I still would imagine that on a gas turbine you clearly still have to have a reduction gear system of some time. I don't know the powertrain what it would be, but I imagine it would have to be very, very, very similar.
Yeah, probably.
You need to decrease your speed and increase your torque.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I presume if you didn't have that gearing and you tried to put that amount of RPMs at low torque into something that needs a lot of torque to get its rotary motion, I mean, those two objects coming together are just going to bend one another. They're just going to trash one
Dude,
another.
I gotta tell you, there's a watch that you stand called Messenger Watch, and it's only nukes could stand it. But it's the only watch that allows you to go roam the ship. Okay, so it was a favored watch. People did like that watch because even though it was the most demanding as far as taking logs and things of that nature, you didn't get stuck in the engine room all the time. You could go roam, and one of the things you had to go check was the bearings on the shaft itself. So you had to go down this ladder, and this long shaft, and this is a hollow tube basically filled with sand. But I got to tell you, that shaft would torque. It would twist. And I'm telling you, if you were down there and that thing was to break, you wouldn't survive it.
Oh God, no.
The energy in that is a lot of freaking energy.
And I presume it was filled with sand in order to be able to allow it to flex.
Yes. Yeah. Elasticity. Yeah. Because you didn't want it to be rigid. You want it to be able. Yeah. I mean, because if you have a rigid body, it's going to be bad. But yeah, it was very, very long because you had two shafts, one going through one engine room, which is further to the front of the ship, and then the other engine room was closer. I was in the one front of the ship, so the shaft that on the starboard side was shorter than the one on the port side.
With the engineering tolerances required there, how did they deal with expansion and contraction over like a drive shaft like that?
Well, it's all factored in. I mean, the shafts. I mean, again, they're not a rigid material, and then there's these bearings that they fit into, and these bearings are these big housing, and on that bearing there's a gauge, and so you can actually see the lube oil in it. You can see the temperature, and then you had to track the temperature. If the temperature, let's say the bearing was supposed to be like 78 degrees, and it would fluctuate as you go faster. You'd expect the lube oil in that gear case to be hotter, get to 80, 81, whatever. But all of a sudden, if you saw a trend at constant speed and it's like 78, 79, an hour later it's 80, 82, and let's say the limit's 85, you would have to circle it in red and you see that trend. Well, what do you think would cause that if all of a sudden your bearing started getting hotter? It's called a hot bearing. Well, clearly, you have a bearing failure
by increased friction of some kind.
Yes, you have a bearing that's failing, which is increasing friction, which is increasing heat. Something is wrong with that system, and so you had to track all that, and you had to be able to say, look, we need to tag this out. We need to fix this bearing because these bearings do wear out. I mean, I was, lube oil in there, metal shavings occur, and you can look in the lube oil and see how much metal shavings in there. There's magnets in there, and so when you do a Luplex strainer, you pull out the duplex lube oil filter, you can see in there the metal shavings. They should be very, very minuscule, very minor. They're always going to be some. But if you pulled out this thing and all of a sudden it was just like, tons of shavings in there, you got a major problem. It means something is metal to metal contact and it's wearing it down, right? So I didn't expect this hangout to be talking about this kind of stuff. This is weird. I haven't talked about this shit no big deal. I haven't talked about this shit in years.
I bounce all over the place. But what I was saying about like the our enthusiasm for advanced fields of physics and engineering needing to scale with the technology that we're deploying on a day-to-day basis is if you would only need. I mean, I know it sounds a bit sensationalist, but some sort of like if Yellowstone erupted or something, or a big meteorite came along and slapped the shit out of the planet, we would only need to lose some portion of our population if we didn't have a significant diffusion of advanced technological understanding, and it would knock us back to like an agrarian society. We'd have a load of technology lying around where we'd have nobody would know how it fucking worked. You'd end up like what podcast was I watching? And we could end up sort of being knocked back to being like a hunter-gatherer species where everybody worships like these lumps of stone that are carved to look like mobile phones because they think they were like the deity of this era.
Well, do you remember? I don't remember where it was located, but there was this monument that they had made, and this monument had basically all the information needed to rebuild society in case if there was a catastrophe. And literally it got destroyed by people that thought that was some kind of satanic against God thing. This is a true story. I don't remember the name of the monument, but it was something that had literally how to reconstruct society if there was something along the lines of catastrophic comet, asteroid, earthquake. Well, even earthquake wouldn't be that bad, but a comet would do it, right?
Was this like a relatively modern thing, or is this like an ancient society?
No, this is modern. It was it was in multiple different languages too. Maybe I can look it up. I know what it looked like. So maybe I can find it because I remember. I have to Google this. One sec. Nobody else know what I'm talking about. It didn't get much news, but I thought it was just bizarre because people like, oh, this is how to help humanity if there's ever something that's like species ending and we need to rebuild from scratch, and they literally destroyed it. That's human nature right there, right?
Essentially, it was like it was like the Library of Alexandria, but or like the knowledge and technological equivalent of like a seed vault.
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, seed vault,
yeah.
like a seed vault.
Very, very, very similar thing.
I mean, can you imagine if we had like a massive CME from the sun or something, and it fried all of our telecommunications? I don't think libraries in the Western world get used hardly at all these days. They're closing down left, right, and centre. If we had like,
I found it. Yeah, I found it. It was in Georgia. Georgia monument seen as satanic was damaged from Preton explosion, July 6, 2022. And it was a rural Georgia monument that some conservative Christians criticized as satanic and others dubbed America's Stonehenge, was demolished Wednesday after pre-dawn bombing to one of the 4 granite piles in the rubble. That's not even the one I was thinking of either. I remember this one, but this isn't actually there's another one. This isn't.
How are they storing the information? What was the mechanism? Because you can't like digital
writing in rocks, like literally engraving,
carved in stone.
Yeah. I don't think this is what I was thinking of.
I'd have thought, like, in order to be able to store as much information as possible without it being, eroding over time, you'd be sort of like maybe some sort of like graphene material.
Well, I know it's concrete. I guess it was concrete. Yeah, this is it. I guess. Yeah, America's Stonehenge. Yeah, America's Stonehenge was destroyed because they thought it was satanic. Yeah, that's what it is. It was an odd picture of it. Now that I look at this picture, that's definitely it.
It's amazing, actually. Have you seen the like the Romans just with concrete and old technology? The Romans,
their secret.
Yeah. They used to weak mix lime into
lime and salt water.
Yeah.
Seawater. It was lime. That was the key that scientists were trying to figure out how their concrete stood the time, and they figured out it was soda because of soda from lime, and they used seawater, ocean water.
Yeah, and because we have, so in Birmingham, which I live in the Midlands, so Birmingham is about a half hour, 45-minute drive from me, and we've got a sort of huge motorway called Spaghetti Junction because it looks mad. It's almost impossible to navigate. It's a nightmare to drive around, and it's all of these sort of flyovers basically on concrete legs, and they're all made from pre-stressed aggregate set concrete. And the concrete is naturally concrete is alkaline, and the alkaline environment prevents steel corrosion.
Mm-hmm.
Huge slabs and beams. The way they make them is they get a piece of steel cable and they put it under tension, and then they cast the concrete around it. So every single one is like a miniaturized suspension bridge. It's pre-stressed concrete. And they relied on the alkalinity of the concrete to keep the steel cable under tension from corroding. But because it's now sort of like 70, 80 years old, with constant weather, vehicles driving over it, the concrete, the alkalinity of the concrete has become more neutral or even acidic in some circumstances, which means all of this steel is now starting to corrode. So they start to get potential bridge failures. They were looking and they're all like scratching their heads. They hadn't anticipated this being a problem. Because again, the Romans had used concrete. We're smarter than the Romans. Let's use concrete. And I don't know who it was, but one of my lecturers told me about it. And basically, what they did to fix this problem was they ground off the edge of all. They were looking at hundreds of millions, probably billions of pounds to replace all of these motorways, plus all of the economic damage that it would cause because of all of the commuting area. And what they did was some engineer came up with the idea of grinding the concrete back to expose the end of the pre-stressed steel, painting it with like some kind of zinc or cobalt or some metal laced paint, and then running a low voltage electrical current through the whole thing. And they essentially electrolytically coated the steel reinforcement whilst it was still inside the concrete to increase the lifespan of it.
Mm-hmm.
That engineer, whatever they paid him, not enough. That's, you know what I mean? That's like one of these. But again, if they'd just done it the way the Romans did it, we wouldn't have even needed to.
Yeah, they didn't even discover this. Such a simple thing. But their concrete was self-patching. It's self-fixing. It just rained again, and it would fix itself. It's just weird. Lady, are you fell asleep? Did we bore you to death? I'm sorry.
No. but I am going to drop down because it's now my tea time in this part of the world. So
tea sounds good. Yeah.
And I have a 19-year-old who apparently will die if he doesn't eat at least 4 hourly intervals. So I need to go and feed him. Oh, I've got one who hasn't eaten for 48 hours because he's waiting surgery, and I've got another one who's starving to death apparently since lunchtime.
Let's get some Costco pizza.
No, we don't have Costco where I live.
You don't know what you're missing, man. You have not experienced the joy and wonder of Costco.
I get to live in the wild north of Australia, where
you get to live where everything's trying to kill you.
Yeah, pretty much. Can't swim, can't go outside in the bush. The spiders come in the house.
When you live in a place where you actually are okay with huntsman spiders because that's the lesser of the evils. Yeah, I'm not moving to a place like that. I mean, granted, I understand huntsman spiders are pretty harmless, but when that's the lesser of the evils, no.
It's the huntsmen are easy to deal with. We've got some lakes not even a kilometre away from us that are full of saltwater crocodiles, and we've got massive deadly snakes. It's the huntsmen don't bother me.
Yeah, well, generally huntsmen don't bother anybody. They're pretty timid, and even if you had one, they don't bite unless you aggravate them. But yeah, I mean the snakes down. No. I like snakes too, but I mean I'm sorry, but I'm not going to have a Taipei or a mamba or a diamondback. I mean, I happen to like snake. I would love. I had garter snakes, but they died. But I like gopher snakes. I like garter snakes. I like corn snakes. All perfectly harmless, right? Pythons are not harmless. They do bite. They're not venomous for humans, but they're constrictors, but they will bite you. But so I don't want any kind of a snake that can hurt. Gopher snakes and garter snakes are perfectly harmless.
I don't know if it's urban legend or if it's true, but I heard tell of like a girl who had like a constrictor snake of some kind, a rather large one, and she used to sleep in she used to let it like sleep in her bed with her and stuff, rather than it having.
No, because constrictors don't know you from. I mean, yeah, sure, they may not bother with you, but as soon as they do,
she took it. Apparently, she took it into her vet because it had stopped eating. And she was concerned about it, and the vet was
talking. Ate her dog?
No, the vet was talking. She was talking to the vet about it, and she happened to say that, he's really friendly, sleeps in bed with me and stuff, but I'm really worried about him because he's not eating. And it turns out that, and I don't know how. Again, this could be total urban legend and it's just total bullshit. And apparently what the vet had said to her was that you absolutely should not do that at all. The reason the damn thing has stopped eating is because it's fasting in preparation for
to eat you, right? Yeah, exactly. That's because it knows it's going to have a big meal.
Yeah, so sort of like this giant snack lying in bed next to me every night. It was somebody will have to, if they listen to this in the comments at a later stage, will have to let me know if that's true or not. Because
I think it's a true story. I remember something on it as well. And there's a guy that actually made a suit and let himself be eaten by a python.
What?
And actually, this guy made a snake-proof suit, and let himself be swallowed by a python.
But wouldn't it constrict him?
Yeah, he had to get him. They had to get him out because it just start even his crush-proof suit couldn't handle it. But that's a true story too. Look at that.
The pythons are not a big thing to worry about because they're generally big snakes. So you can
they're not going to be chasing
away from them.
Yeah,
we have a snake called a whip snake here.
Whip snake, of course.
A whip snake, and it's tiny, and you won't see it, but it's absolutely damn deadly. You tread on that thing, it's going to flick up, it's going to bite you on the ankle, you're going to be dead. Yeah, and they're the things that I don't like.
We got whip snakes here. The not in California that I'm aware of, but they're not as venomous as your guys' are. But like the most deadliest snake that I think is what's called a black mamba. As far as the toxicity of their venom, the most they put out, if I remember correctly, was like 400 milligrams, which is enough to stop like 12 elephants. Just amazing how much they can envenomate, because they don't just bite once; they bite multiple times. But just a single bite from a mamba, you're going to lose your finger. You might lose, your hand, and that's if you get full medical treatment. It is probably the worst.
Toxic, but
yeah. There's been a lot of snake handlers missing a finger because they had a black mamba bite. And I used to watch. I still do. I like watching snake stuff. I like watching snakes eat. I watch live feedings. I know it seems barbaric, but it's just nature, right? And snakes are just, I find snakes to be absolutely fascinating creatures. But I'll never have, a deadly one.
Well, we're either fortunate or missing out in the UK, because there's only 3 indigenous snake species in the UK. There's probably more snakes of other varieties now because people have probably lost them or let them leave. But we've only got 1 indigenous venomous snake, and outside of somebody having it's not.
Well, yeah, you got invasive snakes, but you have a lot of adder, because black adder, that's where they came from. Adder snakes. But you basically adder.
Snake.
Yeah, adders are indigenous to UK, right?
Yeah,
grass snakes and
snakes. I can't remember the other one is.
Yeah, but you don't have shit like what the hell is that snake called? Oh god damn it! It's actually the venom is actually almost like necrotic. It is called a boom slang. You don't have those, do you?
Yeah. We don't have any venomous spiders. Well, there are venomous spiders, but they never bite people, and even if they did, it'd be an irritation. We don't
boom
really.
Snakes are nasty. They basically. She was talking about these little whip snakes. It's kind of like a whip snake. I don't know how related they are, but it looks a lot like a whip snake. But this boom slings will hang out on these trees in Africa, and if you walk by one and you're gonna get bit, you're done for it. And I don't know why anybody would have these things as pets, but people do. Boom slings, people have them as pets. People have freaking Taipei as pets and crates. Crates. Hell no. And I remember being in the Gulf, and you look in the sea. What was this? The where the Straits of Hormuz are in the Mediterranean. There's sea snakes there, and they're on the surface. These things are poisonous. Or venomous, not poisonous, venomous. These sea snakes can't kill you if you fall overboard. And I didn't realize at the time. I was like, oh, they're really cool. you're thinking just like could kill you.
Yeah, we have those as well.
Yeah, you also got blue. You also got blue ring octopi. You've got redback spiders.
We've got funnel web spiders.
Funnel web spiders, like
Irukandji jellyfish. We've got
even butterflies. They're poisonous.
You got jellyfish.
You know, even the most innocuous thing in the world, ladybugs are trying to kill you there. I mean, it's just weird how people survive in Australia.
Oh, we're tough.
Keeping venomous pets and an anti-venom exists. At least you can keep that in case.
Well, yeah, from what I understand, and in every hospital they have like antivenom for redback spiders. But certain types of snakes there is no antivenom for.
Well, apparently, like antivenoms are some of the most common medications that people have allergic reactions to.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you get to hospital in time and they give you the appropriate antivenom,
may not help. Yeah, may make it worse.
You can have another reaction. You can have an anaphylactic shock from that.
Yeah, I mean, there's this one guy who's a wildlife handler, and he got bit in India with a black mamba, and he ended up being in the hospital for 3 days. They had to put him on a ventilator because the black mamba bite is a paralysis. It literally causes you to go paralyzed. That's how the snake gets its prey. So if it's going to paralyze a human, what do you think it's going to do to a small, mouse in a matter of a few minutes? But he had to go on a ventilator for those 3 days because his diaphragm was paralyzed. He would have died. So he came out of it at the end because the poison wore off, but it was only because he was able to get out of the hospital within 10 minutes.
But I mean, nature is unbelievable for stuff like that. It's like I sort of get like the incredulity that people have sometimes because this can't have happened just as because when you think about like the most on Earth are like some Amazonian frogs and toads.
Frogs. Yeah, they're one of the frogs down there is so toxic that snakes die by eating it.
Yeah.
The cane toads.
I don't remember the names. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, those cane toads.
Cane toad. Yeah, cane toad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because normally snakes will detect that it doesn't taste right, but some of them get so hungry I guess they don't care, but they die. The poison is so toxic.
So we've lost a good proportion of our really large goannas because the goannas seen them as food, and of course, yeah, it's wiped out a huge species of goanna here where I live. So we've had to migrate quolls to one of our outer remote islands and stock the island up that are actually free from these toads, so we don't lose that species as well. So, but look,
I thought it wasn't the cane toad that was actually introduced.
Yes, in the 30s.
Yeah,
exactly. Cane beetle.
Yeah, they introduced these cane toads to try to take care of the beetles, but what ended up happening is that other wildlife like snakes and crocodiles and alligators were eating the toads, and it wiped out like a large percentage of the reptilian population that was eating these toads because they didn't have the foresight to go, we're putting in a poisonous toad in an environment with other types of predation, and these things are going to eat this and they're going to die. So it made a huge problem. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Must be.
So we play a game with them. So with golf clubs, they do hunts. You spray them with like antiseptic.
You do know they can kill you, right?
Well, it's only if they secrete the toxins out from behind their neck. Mm-hmm. So you can touch a cane toad, but if it's secreting the toxins out from behind its neck, and you touch that, that's the stuff that'll kill you. So you don't lick them. Essentially,
don't lick toads.
Well, you don't lick them too much because if you lick them a little bit, it just makes you really high.
Well, there's some toads that have hallucinogenic properties.
Yeah. So
here, lick this toad.
It's our favorite game here.
But I don't talk about nature stuff that often. No, even John could tell you I don't talk about these stuff on my channel that much. But I have interests like anybody else, and one of my interests in growing up was I really was fascinated by snakes, garter snakes, especially. We were all over the place where I lived in the fields, and you get to recognize the ones that are harmless, because in California the only real spiders that are going to be, I mean, snakes that are that dangerous. You've got your sidewinder, you've got your diamondback, you have your coral snake, but most snakes in California are generally going to be, as far as venom, pretty harmless for the most part. So when you run into a gopher, a corn snake, or a king snake, 9 times out of 10, you're safe. It's that other 1%, 10% you got to watch out for. So I'm not saying go in California, go handle snakes, but you don't find a lot of people in California dying from snake bites unless it's a rattler. And even then, most of the time they're within an area where they can get help and have anti-venom. So,
but we don't have a lot of people who die, probably more proportional than California. But, I suppose when you live with those species, you're more aware. So it's, you don't hear that every week there's thousands of people getting rushed to hospital due to snake bites.
Well, because they kind of stay away from them, right? I mean,
that's right.
Most of these animals are not animals that go out to attack humans. They're just wrong place, wrong time kind of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So,
yeah.
And
there's reasons, the good reasons for that, because snakes and other animals have to, rebuild their venom, and so if they waste it on something in defense like a human, then they're not going to have it available to eat. And so snakes will do what's called a dry bite, where they don't envenomate. They just give you a warning, which will hurt, but it doesn't inject any venom. And most of the time with humans, snakes will give you a dry bite as a warning, because they don't want to waste that venom, because they want to save it for their prey.
Well, yeah, because it's resource heavy. Where they're having loads of discussions at the moment about introducing certain species to the United Kingdom, because we've so successfully killed anything that was going to be a problem to our agricultural industry and what have you. Like, we don't have wolves here, we don't have bears, we don't have any large cats of any kind here anymore. So they're talking about reintroducing things like some wildcats and things. But
it's so hard to know the ramifications of introducing a species, a foreign species.
The farmers have collectively lost their shit, because we have a hard enough time protecting things like lambs and things from foxes and stuff.
Oh, can you imagine if they put large cats in there? Okay.
Well, it's because the foxes in the UK are considered a pest species. Farmers can shoot them.
I know, but foxes are kid foxes are so cute.
Oh, savage little bastards. Oh, we had a fox kill a bunch of our chickens last week. If I'd have, I was considering.
They're so cute. They're so cute.
The thing is, they're urban foxes, so we've never really had an issue with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if the fox now has a taste for shredding chickens rather than just going through bins and scavenging, I might end up having to do something about it. I was seriously thinking about baiting it and getting rid of the little bastard.
Well, relocate them. Yeah, I think foxes are cute.
You're not allowed to locate them. So there are things like
really.
If something's classified as a pest species in the UK and you can't re-release it, it's illegal.
I don't like that though. I mean, I can never hunt for sport. I could never do it. Fishing, sure, but I can never hunt for sport. But people that hunt and eat the meat, I have no problem with. But just to hunt a species, because it's like, I understand invasive species, but a fox, I couldn't do it. I just honestly couldn't do it.
One of the worst invasive species we've got, like mammalian invasive species, it's like loads of like the American crayfish and stuff that's destroying our trout population, our rivers, because they eat the eggs. Is the grey squirrel, which is the right fucking pain in the ass. I've got a shoot permission near me. I shoot dozens of the dogs every time I go out there.
Yeah, we have the same thing. We have prairie dogs down here in the Midwest that are the same thing. Prairie, you can kill as many prairie dogs as you want. They're considered to be a pest, invasive.
Well, they're like a ground squirrel, are they?
Yeah, it's a ground squirrel, type of ground squirrel.
Yeah, the grey squirrel here, they spend most of their time up trees, but the shoot permission I've got near me, they've got a hazelnut orchard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a commercial hazelnut orchard. And these they're just absolutely shredding. But yeah, no, I mean that's not as much as I shoot them for sport. It is for an intended purpose for the farmer. You know.
Yeah, no, I get that. I understand that. I just it's not I'm not into shooting animals. It's just not my thing.
They get wasted. They get fed to the dogs and stuff. So
yeah, again, if they have a purpose, and obviously, I have no problem with somebody killing a rodent to go feed for something else. And obviously, I do watch the live feedings, and I find them fascinating. So I understand there's a reason for tooth and claw and nature and all that stuff. It's just I don't want to do it, right? I don't want to be the one harming the rabbit to feed to the snake, because rabbits are so cute. But I understand that a snake will eat a rabbit,
The reason the farmers are going mental about them introducing 150 wildcats is because obviously, these things, lambs, like little sheep, are fucking defenseless. They can't even defend themselves against a crow. So,
well, do you know that? This is true? Disneyland. We have Disneyland here, and do you know that they have their own fleet of cats? They have cats around the park, and that those cats are there to control the mouse population.
Like mice and rats and things.
Yeah, that's what they're for. They have the Disneyland has their own population of cats for that very purpose, for rodent control, because
our cats brought in a rat, but it obviously hadn't killed it. It was friggin' huge. It was like 8 inches long, massive. And they obviously hadn't killed it. They just sort of like stunned it. So they brought it into the house, and then the rat came too. The shit out of the cat and then started running around the house.
So I like rats and mice when they're not feral, when they're not like wild. A pet mouse and a pet rat, those are cute. Pet hamster, guinea pig. I loved what's the biggest rodent? What are they called? Capybaras. Love them. Capybaras are so freaking cute.
Well, they're like dogs, aren't they?
They're like if a dog and a rat had an illegitimate love child, and then overfed it, you get a capybara. It's just they're so cute.
Have you seen those videos of the crows and the jackdaws and things doing problem solving?
Yeah, of course.
There's the one that amazed me was they had like a funnel, and the water level in the funnel was just below where the crow could get its beak in.
Yeah, so he would add stuff in there for Archimedes' principle.
Yeah. That just blew my mind.
Yeah. Birds can do problem solving. They say that some birds and some primates are literally on the level of a toddler. But here's the weirdest part. When you have a chimpanzee or something that's on the level of like a 2 or 3 year old that can do some pretty amazing stuff, or Coco, just sign language and stuff like that. And then you have a bird that has the brain the size of a freaking pea or something, that has those cognitive functions.
So that's why I just brought it up. Like we've got this sort of like there seems to be this intuition that it's the size of our brain and the neuronal density that gives us our intellect and our sort of dynamism, but that doesn't seem to ring true when you look at stuff like that, does it? It doesn't seem to be.
Dolphins' brains are bigger than ours.
Yeah,
and when you have a brain the size of a walnut or something and it has that kind of ability, that's just mind blowing.
That's what I mean. I'm fascinated to know, if we ever will know, like how they managed to achieve that level of intelligence. And whilst that level of intelligence does seem rudimentary to us, when you look at the size of the brain and the structure of the brain, how bloody hell have they achieved that with what they've got to work with?
Or even more so, octopi have multiple brains. They have a central brain, and then in each arm they have a bundle of neurons, which is like a little mini brain, and they're able to have an amazing amount of sense data, amazing amount of perception for taste, texture. They can tell food from non-food, and they say that the problem-solving skills of octopus is up there of almost of a person sometime. And I've watched that kind of stuff. I've watched these octopi figure out very complex things, and to say that we're not related to animals is just mind-blowing, because clearly we are. Clearly, there's a connection between us and all other animals. And it's hard to reduce it down to just a physical thing. I think there's clearly some mental processes going on that we don't understand how they arise. And I have this discussion on the mind body stuff in one of my other videos, but I'm just not convinced that everything is just some strictly physical mechanistic thing, because look at the intelligence of these animals with half the neuron density, even a fraction, not even half, just a fraction of it. So I can't explain it, nor do I say that I can.
I wouldn't even be, and like I say, even I don't even know if it is or isn't the case that the crow brain, it might physically be smaller, but it might have a higher neuronal density.
Yeah, but to have the amount of cognitive abilities, I mean, birds recognize faces. Birds can remember people. They absolutely have an amazing sense of direction, because they have that little magnetic thing that allows them to, determine directionality from the North Pole. But I think birds are very, very evolved creatures.
Yeah. Did you hear that joke? So there's this lady goes to the pet shop. She's interested in buying a parrot, and the pet shop owner says, "Oh, we've only got one parrot in at the moment, but I'm afraid he's a bit vulgar because he was actually rehomed him from a brothel." And the lady goes, and the lady goes, "Well, I mean, that's not really going to put me off that much." And so she gets a great deal on this parrot, and she takes the parrot home, puts him on his perch, and the parrot looks around and goes, new brothel, new madam. And then later that day, her daughters visit, and the parrot goes, new brothel, new working girls. And the woman thinks, this is getting a bit rude. And then her husband comes home, and the parrot goes, "Hi, Keith."
Yeah, I've heard variation of that one before. So, but I think I'm gonna wrap it up, John. This was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. As shy as I feel right now, but
yeah, I feel better. I gotta get some rest myself. Got a few things I gotta take care of tomorrow, but I'll be back home. I'll be out. I go early, but I'll be back. Probably tomorrow night. But I got to get up early. So, all right, sound good?
Thanks for the chat, man. Fun as always.
All right, thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys, for a late night hangout. Just to hang out about anything. I love these types of hangouts. We're just kind of all over the place. Get to talk about all kinds of stuff we don't normally ever talk about. And this was interesting because we got to talk about snakes. And I like that. I like wildlife stuff. I really do. I love watching Natural Geographic stuff. I have for years. And so I've watched all the videos of that stuff, man. And I just find them to be very fascinating. But anyways, thanks for hanging out with me tonight, because I had a long day today, a lot of stuff going on, and just wanted to socialize. So I appreciate it. And like I said, I won't be back till tomorrow night, so got stuff to do. And how do I end this? All right, good night, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a message, and thanks for joining us Without a Lawyer. Appreciate it. Great to have your input. Stay away from that stuff that's trying to kill you down there, and hope your sons feel better. Good night.
To the sound.